Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump will have a press conference with the FBI director this afternoon on reducing violent crime across the country. We'll bring it to you live. The Supreme Court today heard a second challenge to Louisiana's congressional district map. The case revisits what role race plays in drawing district lines. President Trump says a list will be released soon of Democrat-backed programs that will be cut. We discussed this with the guest panel. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent optimistic that trade tensions with China can de-escalate. But he has a message of caution to U.S. allies amid China's economic coercion. Israel says one of the bodies returned by Hamas isn't a hostage, an unsettling discovery straining the fragile truce in the two-year war.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. A vote in the Senate to fund the federal government failed again yesterday, with 49 votes in favor and 45 opposed, which needs 60 votes to pass. We are now on day 15 of the government shutdown. Republicans are emphasizing the sacrifice that service members are making, while Democrats are pointing to challenges to healthcare. Here's more from their leaders today.
One segment of the population that truly deserves better treatment than the Democrats are giving them, and that is our military. Today, if it weren't for the bold leadership of President Trump helping us to protect our military, everyone needs to understand that 1.3 million active duty service members would be missing a paycheck. They'll get their check, thankfully, because President Trump has shown strong leadership. And under his direction, the Department of War has now redirected unspent funds to ensure that our troops are taken care of. And this is while Democrats are playing political games. Last night, they played some games. They stormed my office.
Donald Trump promised to love and cherish Medicaid. Instead, Republicans enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. That's unacceptable. Republicans falsely claim now to be the party of health care, but their policies are closing hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers all throughout the country. That's unacceptable. The Trump administration is giving $20 billion to bail out a right-wing wannabe dictator in Argentina. But Republicans are unwilling to spend a dime to provide affordable health care to working-class Americans. That's unacceptable. The American people deserve better.
House Speaker Mike Johnson presented numbers of service members in each Democrat-run state. He said, of the 10 states with the largest military population, 6 are represented by 2 Democrats in the Senate. He accused the Democrats of taking hostage of the troops to play political games. On the Democrat side, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said his party is fighting the, quote, broken healthcare system and high costs of living. He said it's time to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits and prevent rising healthcare premiums. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said today the 2-week-old federal government shutdown is costing the U.S. economy about $15 billion a day in lost output. He urges Democrats to be heroes and side with the Republicans to end it. Also, during the meeting with Argentina's President Javier Milei yesterday, President Trump said his administration will release a list on Friday of Democrat programs to be permanently cut amid the ongoing government shutdown. Now, the Trump administration is condemning the Chinese regime's latest restrictions on rare earth products. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and Secretary Scott of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, provided the latest updates today. Listen.
China's announcement is nothing more than a global supply chain power grab. While China has taken a number of retaliatory trade actions against the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, and others in recent years, this move is not proportional retaliation. It is an exercise in economic coercion on every country in the world. At its core, China's new measures include a rule saying that any product of which more than 0.1% of minerals consist of minerals mined or processed in China one must seek approval from the Chinese government before trading it. Since many important semiconductors, for example, have these critical minerals, and semiconductors are in nearly everything, this rule gives China control over basically the entire global economy and the technology supply chain.
Korea said China's export controls are a clear repudiation of the past 6 months of trade negotiations. Meanwhile, Bessent is optimistic that the trade tensions can de-escalate. He said the U.S. has had substantial communication with China over the past few days, and there will be more this week. The Treasury Secretary noted that the Trump administration wants to help China, not hurt it. That's because a slowdown in the global economy will hurt China the most. But he stressed that China cannot be trusted with the global supply chain.
This should be a clear sign to our allies that we must work together, and work together we will. There will be a series of meetings this week during World Bank IMF week, and we are all aligned. Not only is China fueling Russia's war, but China's actions have once again demonstrated the risk of being dependent on them on rare earths, and for that matter, anything. If China wants to be an unreliable partner to the world, then the world will have to decouple. The world does not want to decouple. We want to de-risk. But signals like this are signs of decoupling, which we don't believe China wants. And again, we do not want to decouple. We should work together to de-risk and diversify our supply chains away from China as quickly as possible.
Korea said there are a lot of low-risk areas where the U.S. can trade with China. Bessent emphasized that the U.S. will not be commanded or controlled by China's economic coercion. He noted that President Trump is still expected to meet with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in South Korea at the end of the month. And China's new restrictions on rare earth exports are raising concerns in Europe. European officials say the EU is teaming up with the U.S. and other G7 partners to craft a united response to the Chinese Communist Party. China, the world's top rare earth producer, just tightened its export rules, adding new elements and restrictions for semiconductor makers ahead of planned talks between Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping. The EU Trade Commissioner yesterday called the move unjustified, saying EU ministers meeting in Denmark see it as a critical concern. He said the G7 could hold a video call this week to coordinate next steps, including potential plans to diversify supply chains and speed up new mining projects. The Danish foreign minister urged Europe to stay tough and united, but also to work closely with Washington. Trump, meanwhile, has threatened China with 100% tariffs, sparking a brief sell-off on Wall Street. Today in Washington, Supreme Court justices are weighing race-based redistricting. Oral arguments are underway in the case focused on Louisiana. The ruling could have ripple effects for several other states that plan to redraw their lines, or have already done so. NTD's Melina Weisskopf was in front of the court. She tells us what's on the line.
It is a Louisiana-focused case, but the implications could stretch much further than Louisiana. Look, if the justices side with Louisiana, this could enable red states to more easily redraw their lines. That could give Republicans a stronger edge in the 2026 midterms. Now, Steph, the crux of the question before the justices today is whether the popular interpretation of the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is constitutional or not. Now, emotions are high out here. As you see behind me, there's a group of protesters who have been gathering here outside of the court steps since early this morning, and emotions are high for good reason. This argument today is important, Steph. Look, the fact that justices asked the lawyers before the case to come for a second argument in this same case is a rare occasion, and it indicates that justices might be preparing to make a major change to the law here. Now, arguments are still underway right now. I want to listen to what both sides have said before the justices. Listen in.
That race is playing an outsized role in the electoral process in Louisiana. And so the idea that you have to show that a party is the reason for the racially polarized voting would eclipse the entire Section 2 analysis, which is focused on ferreting out and ending race discrimination in the political process.
You said several times that it's playing an outsized role. Is there, and what's the proper outsize? In other words, is that wiggle room we're talking about, or a significant percentage? What is meant by outsized?
So this court has held for a long time, beginning in Shaw and in many cases since, that there's always an awareness of race. There are always racial considerations and even race consciousness in the districting process. What becomes potentially unlawful is when race is the motivating factor.
Embedded within these express targets are racial stereotypes that this court has long criticized. They assume, for example, that a black voter, simply because he is black, must think like other black voters, share the same interests, and prefer the same political candidates. And this stereotyping system has no logical endpoint. We are 40 years removed from jingles, and yet, according to my friends on the other side, nothing has changed in the voting and housing patterns in Louisiana that require race-based redistricting. These problems are part of why we never wanted to be here in the first place. They have placed states in impossible situations where the only sure demand is more racial discrimination for more decades.
Now, to get into the details a little bit, the deal here is that Louisiana initially had one black majority district. Then it was ordered by a lower court to create a second black majority district. Then a group of non-black voters sued to try to reverse this. So that's sort of what's going on in the nitty-gritty of the case. The ruling that justices give here will determine whether Louisiana can keep its current map as is with the two black majority districts or has to redraw these maps. And that could endanger possibly the Democrat incumbent Cleo Fields. But of course, we know there are more than 20 other black majority districts across the nation that could also be impacted by this case. And we know that, of course, Republicans have a very slim majority in Congress. So any of these changes could lead to Republicans holding on to their majority and even expanding it come 2026. Now, court experts have suggested and predicted that what justices may do here is to rule that race-based redistricting is unconstitutional, but just limit the scope of the order so that the decision's effect will have a limited scope there.
The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments in Louisiana versus Calais, a gerrymandering case involving Louisiana's congressional map. Joining us to discuss is Bobby Ann Cox, civil rights attorney, fellow at the Brownstone Institute, and legal analyst. So good afternoon, Bobby Ann, to you. This case challenges the legality of Louisiana's creation of a second black majority congressional district. And I understand you actually listened in on the oral arguments. Can you just give us your overall feeling? What stood out to you based on what you heard? Was there any preference at all indicated by the judges on one side or the other?
Well, it did seem for the part of the oral arguments that I listened to, I believe they're still going on now, but it did seem like the justices were asking questions of the attorneys, which indicated, where they thought this case should come out. And it seemed to be divided on party line, really. The three liberal justices seemed to be asking questions that were clearly indicating that they felt like, the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act should stand and remain and was not unconstitutional. Whereas you saw the other six justices, who are the more conservative justices on SCOTUS, they were asking questions of the attorneys that seemed to be more defining on, this is a violation. The Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is a violation of our 14th Amendment and our 15th Amendment of our federal Constitution. So their questions did seem to be falling along party lines, with the six conservative justices leaning more towards the idea that in this particular instance, the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 is a violation of our 14th and 15th Amendments. And, just to be clear, this is the second time the United States Supreme Court is hearing this particular case. They decided not to rule on it last term, although they did hear the case. And they told the attorneys for both sides to come back this session, which is why we're here again today, to come back this session and argue a slightly different point, which is whether or not Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is constitutional, or does it violate the 14th and 15th Amendments? So they purposely pointed to this specific topic, which will have far spread implications depending on which way the justices come down, because this is now talking about an entire section of the Voting Rights Act, which will affect other cases and other states.
So can I get your thoughts on whether, the counter argument, whether Section 2 protect minority voters from having their voting power reduced?
Yes. So the intent of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is to basically protect all Americans with their right to vote. And it says that you can't discriminate against somebody because of their either their ethnic origin or they belong to a certain ethnic group, for example, Italian Americans or Chinese Americans or something like this. So the intent of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is to make sure that, hey, we want everyone, all Americans, to be able to have proper access to the polls. And we also want them to have their vote count. So it basically is a provision put in this law to protect you, no matter what your ethnic origin is or the color of your skin. The problem lies with the fact that how you interpret that and how you apply that language in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act can, in fact, be a violation of the 14th and 15th Amendments of our federal Constitution, which say, in essence, the 14th Amendment says that everybody has equal rights, equal protections under our laws. So you can't discriminate and apply our laws differently to different people just because of your ethnicity, your national origin, or the color of your skin. And then the 15th Amendment says, in essence, that you can't discriminate against somebody, with the right to vote because of their skin color or their ethnicity or their national origin, in essence, right? So I'm paraphrasing these two amendments to our Constitution. So the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act comes in direct conflict with, for example, the 15th Amendment of our Constitution, which says, well, you can't discriminate based on someone's, let's say, in this instance of this case in Louisiana, their skin color. But then Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act says, well, we want to protect you so that your skin color does matter, right? So it's a very fine line between Section 2 language of the Voting Rights Act and our 14th and 15th Amendments. And I think the way that Section 2 language has been interpreted in some of these cases is indeed a violation of the voting right. Is indeed a violation of the 14th and 15th Amendment of our federal Constitution. So this is a very interesting and very important case. And we'll see how SCOTUS comes down on this, but it can definitely have far-reaching repercussions.
So I understand your points, but if we look historically, have courts, allowed race to be a factor in drawing districts?
So race is not supposed to be the sole factor. It's not supposed to be the only reason that you draw a congressional district. It can be taken into account, is what the law says, but it's not supposed to be the only thing that is looked at when you draw a congressional district, because that would indeed, undoubtedly, be a violation of our Constitution. So courts in the past have allowed race to be one of the factors that are taken into account when these congressional lines are drawn in the states. It doesn't matter what state it is. But again, fine line here, because race can't be the only thing they look at. Otherwise, that is unconstitutional. It would be discrimination, whether your skin is white or black or, some color in between, you're not allowed to have that as the main focus or the only focus of why you're drawing a district. So yes, it's definitely a fine line, and there's a lot of gray area. How much has a court, in a court decision, how much have they allowed race to be an element of determination in how that district was drawn? Right? It's a very gray area. There's not a straight a straight line in the sand that says, once you cross this line, you are now all of a sudden using race as the main issue or the main determining factor in how you draw those lines. So it is a gray area, and it's not something that's black and white.
Okay, I think you explained it pretty clearly here. I'll just ask you one more question. And Bobby Ann, I was looking into this a bit earlier today, and I found that we've seen cases like Allen versus Milligan, right, where the court upheld Section 2. So is Louisiana versus Calais similar or different from that case?
Yeah, it is slightly different. And here's the issue. This is actually one of the points that they were arguing during oral arguments earlier this afternoon that I was listening to. And it is a different case. The facts were different in that case. And the problem is that, as I said earlier, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the language can be interpreted by courts across the country and differently. And it can be applied differently by the courts across the country, depending on how they're interpreting that language. So, as I said, if you take Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and under Milligan, the Supreme Court did not decide in that case whether or not Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is on its face, meaning the plain language of Section 2, is unconstitutional, is a violation of Amendment 14 or the 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution. They did not decide that in the essence or in the circumstances of this language being applied to the gerrymandering or trying to avoid the gerrymandering of lines, or congressional lines. So the cases are different, and this has not yet been decided by the United States Supreme Court. And I hope that they do decide this, because they asked for this one issue to be decided. They asked the attorneys to come back. They asked them to do briefings specifically on this point. They asked them to come back and re-argue this case specifically on this point in this session. So I do think we're going to get a ruling from them on this point in this session. And it's going to be extremely important, because what they decide here, if they say that Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act is unconstitutional on its face, and they strike it down. Now, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think perhaps a certain provision within Section 2 might be struck down, but I don't think they're going to take the entire Section 2 out of the Voting Rights Act. But this is an extremely important case, because if they do say that part of Section 2 is a violation of the 14th or 15th Amendment of the Constitution, then that's now going to open the door to other districts in other states being redrawn. And as you know, the congressional races that are coming up in 2026 affect the whole country. So who wins in what state does affect the balance of the whole country.
Yeah, it looks like, seems like the impact could be wide-ranging. It's always great to talk to you, and we'll be following this, Bobby Ann, sorry. We'll be following this very closely, and pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Israel says one of the bodies returned by Hamas isn't a hostage, and unsettling discovery straining the fragile truce in the 2-year war. Stay tuned.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
What if kids in America didn't have to go to bed hungry tonight? What if our moms, dads, and grandparents could put healthy food on the table every day to help us grow strong? What if all of our friends and neighbors had fresh food too, and there was no hunger at all in America? And what if there was a way today for you to help? Call now or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. So many of us don't have enough food to eat, but your monthly gift means families across the country and in your community can fill plates with food. Kids can get healthy meals year-round, even when school's out, and our neighbors can have fresh food. Food that moms, dads, entire families need to thrive. But right now, more people are facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. It takes all of us to make that happen. Will you help too? Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give just $19 a month, and we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag. It's our way of saying thank you for helping to end hunger for our neighbors. Because no kid, no mom or dad, nobody should go hungry in America. Nobody. So what if today was the day you could help nourish futures for our friends, our families, for all of us? Ending hunger is possible. What if we end it together? Call or give online today at helpfeedingamerica.org and your gift can be doubled. Thank you.
Did you know Mathis Home has been giving their customers the best styles and value for 65 years? Come celebrate with 65th anniversary savings on everything in the store. This set is a great deal. You get the modern trestle table with 4 comfy side chairs, the complete set for just $8.89. With over 100 dining sets in stock, you're sure to find the one just right for your family and get free delivery. Get your new dining room now with 65th anniversary savings at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
The Israeli military said one of the bodies handed over by the Hamas terror group yesterday is not a hostage who was held in Gaza. The development has added tensions over the fragile truce in the 2-year war. 4 bodies were handed over by Hamas yesterday to ease pressure on the ceasefire, following 4 on Monday. In all, Israel has been awaiting the return of the bodies of 28 deceased hostages. Israel is also handing over bodies of Palestinians under the deal. There was no immediate word on whose body it was. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu demanded today that Hamas fulfill the requirements laid out in the ceasefire deal. Netanyahu said Israel will not compromise on this. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister met with released Israeli hostages at a hospital in central Israel last night. And continuing with the Middle East, a convoy of trucks carrying food, fuel, and medical supplies drove through the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing today, according to local authorities. Aid to Gaza was paused for the past 2 days due to the prisoner and hostage exchange on Monday and a Jewish holiday yesterday. The convoy of 400 trucks includes 5,700 tons of food supplies, 1,400 tons of medical supplies, and about 2,500 tons of fuel. An Israeli doctor says the released hostages under his care are in stable condition, but he said they may need months or even years to heal. The doctor is treating 10 of the 20 survivors of Hamas captivity.
I'm happy to report that they are all in stable condition. While I cannot share more specific details, we remember that every one of them has endured untold adversity and horrors. and therefore the road for the recovery is going to be a very long one.
He added that the rehabilitation process began at the hospital, where the hostages will spend a few more days. Some may be discharged to outpatient care beginning next week. The doctor explained the process is tailored and very specific to each hostage, depending on their condition. Right now, the hospital is focusing on their physical, medical, and nutritional care. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with some of the released hostages at a different hospital. The 20 hostages are being treated at 3 different hospitals. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is in Brussels today. He said that commitments from NATO countries will translate into enhanced firepower. Here he is.
Firepower. That's what is coming. We expect it is coming from NATO. And it was a historic summit just a couple of months ago, brought about by leadership of President Trump to say we need our allies to step up. And they did, and they have in those commitments. Now those commitments will soon translate into capabilities, which is the most important aspect of it. And one part of that, of course, is Pearl, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons, transfer to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict. And if there's anything we've learned under President Trump, is the active application of peace through strength.
Hegseth said that strength doesn't mean using strong words or wagging your finger. The War Secretary remarked that you achieve peace by having strong and real capabilities that adversaries respect. Today's meeting of NATO defense ministers aims to boost military support for Ukraine. As new data shows, Western aid has fallen by 43% in recent months. NATO Secretary Mark Rutte said continued support deters Russian aggression. His remarks come amid rising tensions from drone incursions and Russian airspace violations. Defense ministers also discussed lifting restrictions on NATO equipment to better defend the alliance's eastern borders. Louisiana is taking a stand against foreign AI threats. Governor Jeff Landry signed an executive order on Monday banning Chinese AI tools like DeepSeek from schools, universities, and state agencies. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has this report.
The order targets AI systems run by hostile foreign governments like the Chinese Communist regime. It references national security and privacy concerns. Landry pointed to programs like DeepSeek, which federal investigators say can spread propaganda and transfer Americans' personal data to China. The governor said the move is about putting Louisiana and the U.S. first by protecting students, state agencies, and sensitive data from potential spying. He said, quote, as technology advances, so do the threats, adding that this order is designed to safeguard both people and national security.
And for more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune in to China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on NTD. Los Angeles County has declared a local emergency over federal immigration enforcement, a move rarely used outside natural disasters. Supervisors voted 4-1 to allow measures such as an eviction moratorium for renters who can prove financial hardship tied to ICE operations. Supporters say aggressive federal raids have spread fear and disrupted communities. The declaration also opens the door for state funding to support affected residents. Supervisor Catherine Barger cast the lone no vote, warning the move doesn't meet emergency standards and could invite lawsuits. Federal ICE raids have intensified across Southern California this year, leading to hundreds of arrests and widespread protests. A Supreme Court ruling in September cleared the way for ICE to proceed with enforcement, rejecting claims of racial bias in the detentions. The Coast Guard says it has seized more than 100,000 pounds of cocaine since launching Operation Pacific Viper. One of the most recent operations was pulling bales of cocaine from the Pacific Ocean after a suspect drug boat capsized. Under Operation Pacific Viper, the agency said it has worked with international partners to intercept more than 30 ships and make over 85 arrests. Since the launch in August, the Coast Guard said it has seized an average of 1,600 pounds of cocaine a day. And President Trump says a list will be released soon of Democrat-backed programs that will be cut. Joining us to discuss is George Carrillo, former Democratic candidate for governor of Oregon, and we have Matt Klink, Republican strategist and political analyst. Good afternoon to you. Good to have you both here. George, I'll start with you. So what programs exactly could the president be talking about here?
Well, I think the president's probably going to continue his path on defunding the education system. We'll probably see a cutoff from infrastructure on green energy projects throughout the country. I think he'll also continue to look at subsidies right now because of the shutdown and holding strong on not continuing those subsidies. I also think that he is going to try to put more money in what he says are, successful programs for Republicans, which I think it'll probably be, he'll want to invest into law enforcement and also into more border security and deportation tactics.
So Matt, what are your thoughts here? President Trump framing some of these programs as, semi-communist or socialist. Your thoughts?
Well, look, yeah, there were a lot of programs that the Democratic infrastructure and deep Washington, D.C. has funded for generations that, frankly, had no particular benefit to the broader American public, but they did fund Democrat-specific priorities. I will find it ironic that funding tougher law enforcement, that's not a Republican priority, that's an American priority. But aside from that, Donald Trump, because again, as Barack Obama said, elections have consequences. Donald Trump is going to make it hurt, particularly for Democrats. I will add, though, that Donald Trump is going to get the troops paid today on the 15th. And ironically enough, again, Trump is a master at this. You have the Democrats arguing that Donald Trump couldn't do that. So again, to take an issue, an 80-20 issue, the Republicans take the 80, the Democrats get the 20. They're arguing against paying the troops. So look, the Republicans just want to reopen the government. They have passed a clean continuing resolution, something that the Democrats have done 13 times under Joe Biden. They're not pushing any new policy proposals in this clean CR proposal. And Chuck Schumer, because he fears a run from his left by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is keeping the government closed. And he's not going to be able to hold the American people hostage.
So, George, can I get a response to what you heard Matt said? And how do you feel about the framing of President Trump for these programs as semi-communist or socialist?
So I think it's humorous because one is the fact that Republicans have control of the White House and Congress, both the House and the Senate. We are the minority, and we're standing strong right now in order to be able to protect healthcare for millions of people. And Republicans, their backup is against the wall right now with this government shutdown. They're going to have to own it. There's too many Americans that are going to see an increase in their healthcare premiums, and they're not going to be insurable. And so right now, Republicans continue to lie about the reasons why this government shutdown is happening. If they really want to open up the government, then they need to learn to have some sort of bipartisan conversation and not just have meetings within their own caucus and passing bills without any sort of Democratic support. So right now, it's really on the Republicans. They're going to own it, and they're going to feel it in the midterms.
So, Matt, can I get a response from you? So George mentioned bipartisan negotiations, right? How do you respond to a talking point from the Democratic side that this continuing resolution has no Democratic input?
Well, actually, first of all, it does have Democratic votes. It got Democratic votes in the United States Senate. And as Democratic talking point in Georgia, because of the Senate rules that require 60 votes, we need 8 Senate Democrats to vote affirmatively. We have 4 right now. So eventually, as the pressure builds on the Schumer shutdown, ultimately, the Democrats are going to come back to the table with their tail between their legs, and they'll reopen the government. All the Republicans are saying is, let's open the government, and then we can have as many conversations on health care. I really am looking forward to one, illegal immigrants in the health care bill, and 2 is that during COVID, with the bipartisanship that George just mentioned, The Democrats passed temporary increases to Obamacare. They now want to extend those temporary increases and make them permanent. Only in Washington, temporary spending increase, a permanent spending increase. And the Republicans are just saying, we can even have that conversation. But let's
All right, Matt, you were actually breaking up a little bit just now, so I'll go to George here.
Okay.
We heard bits and pieces of what you said, but some of it we were lost due to the connection. So, George, do you think the cuts are necessary right now due to the shutdown?
So I think what needs to happen is Republicans need to show some good faith here. Every time we try to negotiate when we don't have any control, they go back on their word. They push bills that are not good for the American people. And right now with Democrats, they're saying no. They're drawing a line in the sand, and they're saying we're not going to see millions of Americans lose their health care coverage. And right now it is on the House and the Senate to reconvene, find a way to be able to negotiate and figure out right now, how can we provide a temporary solution before we can have the longer conversation of these subsidies, of how we can create a policy that is not going to devastate Americans throughout this country. And understand that it is a domino effect. When you affect people's accessibility to healthcare, that hurts the US economy. It hurts consumer spending. So we really need to be able to take a look at this and say, okay, let's open up the government. Let's find some common ground. Let's get a bill that is passable. But right now, with the way Republicans are behaving, they're not willing to have conversations. They're putting lawmakers on recess while there's still workers right now, like TSA and air traffic controllers. They're expected to show up and they're not getting paid, but yet our lawmakers are, and yet they're not in session.
So, George, House Minority Leader Jeffries says he agrees with making sure that uniform active duty troops are paid, but House Speaker Mike Johnson accused Democrats of voting 8 times to block their paychecks. He was referring to their votes on the stopgap bill, which would fund the government to a pre-shutdown level. Your response to that?
So I think, again, it's a bunch of smoking mirrors. They're not telling the whole story. The bill is not all about just the paying the troops. I don't believe that Democrats don't want to pay the troops, but we also want to ensure that subsidies are being paid for. There's a reason why we are trying to prevent this bill from passing it in the way that it's current in its current state. And so it's easy for Republicans to change the narrative. Just like when they first came out saying Democrats were all about providing these subsidies for undocumented immigrants, which is completely not true. Undocumented immigrants do not qualify for subsidies, nor do they qualify for Medicaid. And so they're consistently gaslighting the American people on what Democrats are actually trying to do. And Democrats right now are actually working for American families, for middle and low income members throughout the United States that can't afford quality health care. And again, is that what the Republican Party wants to do? They want to eliminate these subsidies to take away accessibility for people's health. Is that what we've come to?
So, George, Matt is actually fixing his connection. In the meantime, do you think that this is the same continuing resolution that Democrats have voted in the past?
Well, Democrats want to be able to see that. So let's go back to like social programs like SNAP and WIC benefits, subsidies for Medicare. These are helping people that don't necessarily have the means, that provides sort of a bridge to be able to help people become more self-sufficient, be able to receive the quality of care that they need. No child, no person should go hungry at night. No one should not receive services, medical services, simply because we draw this political line. That's not what America is about, and that's what we're doing right now. We're politicizing what's in the best interest of the American people right now, and all we're doing is finger pointing. And so right now, remember, Democrats do not have control of the House and the Senate. They're using the power that they have in order to provide a negotiation tactic, and Republicans are not showing up to have those conversations.
Okay, George, I'll ask you one more thing and then I'll go to Matt. I think he's back now. He raised a point earlier and I would like your response. Why not open the government and then we can talk about healthcare or debate about anything once federal employees are being paid?
Because then it's going to be too late. Then what's going to happen? There's going to be millions of Americans that are going to see their premiums double or triple, not getting this that they need. We're going to see loss of life because of that, because of those choices. And Republicans have proven that they don't want to work with Democrats. They want to pass what it is that they want to pass, and they don't necessarily compromise with Democrats. So why would we believe that they are willing to do the right thing after we open up the government?
Okay, so Matt, I think you heard what George said, right? Can you give us a response?
Yeah. Well, look, the subsidies, first of all, the subsidies that they pass tend to go toward middle and upper income voters. Again, this is just a pure government handouts that the Democrats desperately want to expand Obamacare to more and more Americans. The way to do this, if they want to do this, is let's have a straight up or down vote. Don't hold the American people hostage by shutting down the government, and certainly don't do providing money to people who are in this country illegally and no legitimate claim to receiving taxpayer benefits. Period. End of subject. The Schumer shutdown is holding the American people hostage, and the American public will take it out on the Democrats in 2026.
Okay, Matt, I'll just give you one more question here. So George was saying that if we open the government, then it would be too late because, I'm paraphrasing here, it seems like Republicans don't want to work with Democrats.
Well, that's a good Democratic talking point, and it's ironic given that the massive spending that occurred when Joe Biden was in office was a strict party line vote. No, look, we have bipartisan support here. There are 4 Democratic senators who voted for a clean continuing resolution. And George just doesn't want to acknowledge. He would rather let the most radical progressive left in the Democratic Party hold this country hostage. And look, the Republicans aren't going to believe it. The voting public is not going to believe it. And it's going to help the Republicans in 2026 because they will see how extreme the Democrats are. They would rather fund health care for people who are here illegally, not pay our armed forces, cut crime, funding, all because they want to fund their radical groups like Antifa. This is straight out of the Democratic progressive playbook, and the American public sees through it.
Okay, we just have about maybe 30 seconds here. George, if you have any final thoughts you'd like to share, and then we can leave the conversation there.
Sure. It's not about being radical. It's not about a left-leaning agenda. It's about American taxpayers. It's about subsidies for Medicare. And the lies, the continuation of undocumented immigrants, again, they don't qualify. This is not about undocumented immigrants. This is about low to middle income families. These subsidies will help them to be able to have accessibility. And so all of this rhetoric, this is about the health and safety of the American people. And that's what it comes down to.
All right, I think we can leave the conversation there. I'm sure more can be said, but thank you both for coming on today.
Thanks a million.
It's now a good time to invest in gold. With gold prices at a record high, NTD Sean Marshall spoke with some gold dealers in Manhattan's Diamond District about how business is going. We have that story and more after this break.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises. Just try it. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling. I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School, college first-round draft pick. On and off the field, we were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating. But I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20 plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
So we have breaking news here. On the way back to the United States from NATO's defense ministers meeting, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's plane made an unscheduled landing in the United Kingdom. And this was due to a crack in the aircraft windshield. So the plane landed based on standard procedures, and everyone on board, including Secretary Hegseth, is safe. And the emergency happened when the Secretary of War is flying back to the States after the meeting. And the Air Force C-32 carrying Secretary Pete Hegseth was over the Atlantic, and it dropped to about 10,000 feet and now reversed course to the UK. Okay, moving on. A nuclear initiative that aims to provide energy resilience for the U.S. The military will be installing microreactors on U.S. Army bases around the world. The Army and the Department of Energy will work together on what's called the Janus program. Microreactors will be able to generate power without relying on fossil fuels. The Army said the program aims to provide resilient, secure, and assured energy to support national defense installations and critical missions. Officials noted that during future conflicts in the Indo-Pacific, the U.S. will need to be able to access power like never before. The microreactors on Army bases will be commercially owned and operated. Authorities expect the first reactor developed at the Idaho National Laboratory to go critical by next July. Stellantis is making its biggest U.S. investment ever, $13 billion to expand domestic manufacturing over the next 4 years. The automaker says the move will boost U.S. vehicle production by 50% and create more than 5,000 jobs across Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. Stellantis will launch new vehicles, including the next-generation Dodge Durango in Detroit and an all-new midsize truck in Toledo, Ohio. The automaker also plans to reopen its Belvidere assembly plant in Illinois, adding 3,300 jobs and producing Jeep Cherokee and Compass models. The company will refresh 19 products across its U.S. plants through 2029. The expansion comes as Stellantis works to offset billions in tariffs on Canadian and Mexican production implemented under the Trump administration to boost domestic production. Everything is bigger in Texas, including Meta's new data center. The facility can scale to a 1 gigawatt site, which is enough energy to power a city the size of San Francisco for a day. This will make it one of the largest planned data center campuses in the U.S. Meta Platforms announced that it would invest $1.5 billion for the data center in El Paso. This is Meta's third facility of its kind in the state and the 29th in the world. The social media giant is expanding its infrastructure to support AI workloads. Meta expects the new data center to come online in 2028. Once operational, the new facility is projected to create about 100 jobs. Gold surged above $4,000 an ounce for the first time ever on October 8th. Department stores like Tiffany's have to consider raising their jewelry prices for customers. And the Diamond District in New York City is bustling with people looking to sell and buy gold to hedge their bets against inflation of the dollar. NTD's Sean Marshall has more on the story.
Mentions of renewed tariff threats against China helped to push gold up to a new record high with an average around $4,200. But what effects does the rising worth of gold have on department stores and dealers of the precious metal?
It's always good to invest in gold. You have to buy right and buy it from the right person. And, it's a commodity, basically,
In Manhattan's Diamond District, people work on the streets to bring in possible customers to the many jewelry stores in the area. At 55 West, 47th Street, and Manhattan, New York, you can find a hidden gem of sorts. Inside, diamond specialist and gold dealer Albert Chasm has a near endless amount of people coming and going all day, looking for deals on gold, diamond, and watches.
A lot of people are more cautious now to spend. So I do see a lot of people now more selling their older jewelry, trying to cash out while the gold is high, all-time high.
Is now a good time to buy gold? While I was there, a jewelry whale named Jimmy from Lambertsville had just bought an entire jewelry booth and was looking to buy Albert's entire stock.
Somebody just came here and offered to buy my whole showcase. And to be honest with you, I didn't have a number, number one. I didn't have a number on top of my head. Number two, I'm not even interested in selling. The way gold is going right now, for me to sell now would be at a loss. I would make more money just holding it. But it was, I appreciate the offer, though. He would have to write a big fat check.
For anyone wondering if they should wait a little while longer before buying gold, Maury of Royal Diamonds says now is a good time.
When you buy gold, you have the upper hand. Like if you, as an individual, invest $100,000 back in year 2001, buy now without doing anything, no broker, no experience, no nothing, just invest $100,000 in gold. 20 years ago, by now, it's worth $1,400,000 without doing nothing. Just lock it in the safe deposit bank.
For Tiffany owner LVMH and others in the high-end goods industry, the doubling of gold prices in 2 years, along with U.S. tariffs and a weaker dollar, have made it harder to make money while keeping prices steady for customers. Analysts say as brands seek to ease pressure on margins, they would need to be cautious about passing on price increases to shoppers as not to erode demand.
In 1970-something, gold was $200 an ounce. If you bought gold in the 70s, today you'll be a rich person.
Sean Marshall, NTD News.
President Trump will soon have a press conference with FBI Director Patel in the Oval Office on reducing violent crime across the country. Stay tuned after this break.
Food. It fuels our bodies, nourishes our spirits, and brings us together. Because we all need nutritious food to thrive.
Food gives me energy and it also helps me focus.
But not everyone knows where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 7 people in America face hunger. It's tougher than ever for too many of us. But the simple truth is, ending hunger is possible, and it starts with you. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to help families in your community facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. Your monthly gift delivers food where it's needed most, puts fresh food on the table, and helps kids have healthy meals all year round, even when school is out.
You can see the difference with the kids when they're full. Food is everything.
Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Give $19 a month. Your first gift can double in impact. And we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag as a reminder of how you're helping to end hunger for good.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Food donations help me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for the food bank.
I have hope.
The simple truth is, ending hunger in America is possible. You can help make it happen. The need is urgent. Call or go online now to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back in stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump will have a press conference with FBI Director Patel this afternoon on reducing violent crime across the country. We'll bring it to you live. The Supreme Court today heard a second challenge to Louisiana's congressional district map. The case revisits what role race plays in drawing district lines. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the U.S. will impose costs on Russia if the Ukraine war doesn't end soon. He's also urging NATO members to keep buying weapons from Washington. The highlights from today's NATO meetings. After a ninth failed attempt to reopen the government, Senate Republicans tee up a vote on a defense appropriations bill to test Democrats' resolve to continue the shutdown. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent expressing optimism that the U.S. can de-escalate trade tensions with China, but he has a message of caution to U.S. allies amid China's economic coercion. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer promises to release evidence submitted in a now collapsed Chinese spy case. The case relied on evidence that the UK considers China a national security threat, but prosecutors say they didn't receive it.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for staying with us. The Trump administration is condemning the Chinese regime's latest restrictions on rare earth products. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent sent out a strong message today.
China's announcement is nothing more than a global supply chain power grab. While China has taken a number of retaliatory trade actions against the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, and others in recent years, this move is not proportional retaliation. It is an exercise in economic coercion on every country in the world. At its core, China's new measures include a rule saying that any product of which more than 0.1% of minerals consist of minerals mined or processed in China, one must seek approval from the Chinese government before trading it. Since many important semiconductors, for example, have these critical minerals, and semiconductors are in nearly everything, this rule gives China control over basically the entire global economy and the technology supply chain.
Greer said China's export controls are a clear repudiation of the past 6 months of trade negotiations. Meanwhile, Bessent is optimistic that the trade tensions can de-escalate. He said the U.S. has had substantial communication with China over the past few days, and there will be more this week. The Treasury Secretary noted that the Trump administration wants to help China, not hurt it. That's because a slowdown in the global economy will hurt China the most. But he stressed that China cannot be trusted with the global supply chain.
This should be a clear sign to our allies that we must work together, and work together we will. There will be a series of meetings this week during World Bank IMF week, and we are all aligned. Not only is China fueling Russia's war, but China's actions have once again demonstrated the risk of being dependent on them on rare earths, and for that matter, anything. If China wants to be an unreliable partner to the world, then the world will have to decouple. The world does not want to decouple. We want to de-risk. But signals like this are signs of decoupling, which we don't believe China wants. And again, we do not want to decouple. We should work together to de-risk and diversify our supply chains away from China as quickly as possible.
Greer said there are a lot of low-risk areas where the U.S. can trade with China. Bessent emphasized that the U.S. will not be commanded or controlled by China's economic coercion. He noted that President Trump is still expected to meet with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in South Korea at the end of the month. The Coast Guard says it has seized more than 100,000 pounds of cocaine since launching Operation Pacific Viper. One of the most recent operations was pulling bales of cocaine from the Pacific Ocean after a suspect drug boat capsized. Under Operation Pacific Viper, the agency said it has worked with international partners to intercept more than 30 ships and make over 85 arrests. Since the launch in August, the Coast Guard said it has seized an average of 1,600 pounds of cocaine a day. Los Angeles County has declared a local emergency over federal immigration enforcement, a move rarely used outside natural disasters. Supervisors voted 4-1 to allow measures such as an eviction moratorium for renters who can prove financial hardship tied to ICE operations. Supporters say aggressive federal raids have spread fear and disrupted communities. The declaration also opens the door for state funding to support affected residents. Supervisor Catherine Barger cast the lone no vote, warning the move doesn't meet emergency standards and could invite lawsuits. Federal ICE raids have intensified across Southern California this year, leading to hundreds of arrests and widespread protests. A Supreme Court ruling in September cleared the way for ICE to proceed with enforcement, rejecting claims of racial bias in the detentions. The Department of Homeland Security says that Mexican cartels placed bounties on U.S. law enforcement officers and officials. Joining us to discuss is Eamon Blair, a senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He specializes in border security and immigration policy with over 2 decades of experience as a U.S. Border Patrol agent and U.S. Army officer. So, Eamon, good to see you. Good afternoon. How serious would you say this is, this bounty threat to law enforcement?
It's going to be quite serious. As we can see, that we already had 3 gun attacks here in Texas. With the last one, we had some deaths because of that. Now, unfortunately, many Americans think that the cartels, a majority of them are present inside the United States. That's really not how they operate. They operate in a decentralized manner. They have cells that are completely compartmentalized and utilize intermediaries or subcontractors and contractors to do their bidding here in the U.S. In this case, just what DHS put out, they're utilizing gangs like Latin Kings, and they're utilizing the communists or the extreme far left on the streets to do their bidding. So the cartels are still maintaining that control, that command and control, but they're doing it from afar away, and they're doing so that there's a degrees of separation between them and themselves. And it's just a form of counterintelligence work that they're conducting.
So have Mexican cartels always collaborated with street gangs? What is the objective here for these cartels?
Yeah, good question. Yes. So the cartels, ever since they came up into the United States and built that entire pipeline when that was like early 90s, they started working hand in hand with our street gangs. You can look it up on our Texas DPS website. They tier them based off of the level with which they work with Mexican cartels, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And so Latin Kings is one of those tiers. They are a tier 1 gang. Now, in regards to Antifa and communists, yes, we saw this actually in the first Trump administration down there on the southern border. When we started having caravans coming up, we noticed that these anarchists and communists were working on the other side inside Mexico, trying to smuggle human beings and working with the cartels to come up into the United States. So there are a lot of actual Mexican journalists that were down there documenting this, showing that Antifa 100% was in Mexico working hand in hand to eradicate our sovereignty. Because at the end of the day, when you go onto their think tank right now, which is crimethink.com, you can see that their entire goal is to eradicate the sovereignty of this nation by eradicating each and every one of our personal or private property.
So after it does that, then what? I mean, is it looking for control of these Mexican cartels?
Yeah, really, it's looking for a diffusion of our law enforcement. Look, if all of our law enforcement, federal law enforcement, whether that's Border Patrol assisting ICE, whether that's DEA, FBI, if we have to consolidate all of our resources and manpower to just protect ICE operations, that leaves every other cartel operation inside the United States completely wide open. The same tactic was done at our southern border. When you have millions of illegal aliens coming up onto the border, it forces every single federal, local, state, and tribal agency to deal with that humanitarian crisis or challenge. Therefore, it leaves all the other operations that the cartels are involved in completely wide open. This is the same game, and that is why they are heavily invested in making sure that ICE can't do their job, that all the federal agencies have to assist ICE doing their job so that they can continue to conduct their operations.
Do you think the current violence that we're seeing against law enforcement officers is a result of this tiered bounty system that's incentivizing different acts of violence?
No, I think it's because of our it's because of the lack of rule of law that's happening in our streets. Look, unfortunately, we still have elected officials, we have judges, we have district attorneys, we have all these people that are siding with the communists on the streets. They're siding with anarchists. They're siding with everyone that is looking to disrupt and destroy and destabilize our cities. And so, because they see that there's very little action to counter this, there are arrests here and there on protesters, but for the most part, there has been no accountability on the rhetoric. There's been no accountability on any other action other than an assault on an agent. There's been no complete disruption of any of their operations attacking ICE or trying to stop ICE conducting their operations.
So I'm not an expert here, but how are these cartels funding these things, like the bounty, for example? I mean, is it fentanyl?
Yeah, great question. So the cartels are in multiple businesses. They're not just in narcotics, human smuggling, but they're also involved in our agriculture. They're involved in licit and illicit commodities. And look, those millions of people that are inside the United States are recurring revenue for them. Meaning, when you arrest someone as a border patrol agent on the border, and they tell you that they owe $8,000 in U.S. cash to the Mexican cartels before they can pay off their debt and are no longer indentured servants, that takes time. And so the cartels, all these millions of illegal aliens inside the United States, are indebted to the Mexican cartel. So they're still receiving a recurring payment from all these illegal aliens. So the cartels as an enterprise have so many different ways and means to make money that this is a drop in the bucket to put a bounty and have the gang members, quote unquote gang members, do it themselves. And then also there's a degree of separation showing that, hey, we weren't involved, we're in Mexico.
Okay, so how do we cut off this money supply to these cartels, and what is the most effective strategy to protect federal agents?
Yeah, great question. First and foremost, we need to identify all the cartel nodes from Mexico all the way into the United States. Unfortunately, a lot of the financial systems that the cartels utilize are Chinese banking systems or apps. And so right now, the Department of Justice needs to actively pursue with our intelligence community, going out and finding all the social networks and also nodes of the cartels, and just going after the logistics supply chain, whether that's finances, whether that is narcotic supply, whether that is transportation, stash houses, you name it. Second, how can we protect? The number one thing that we can do right now to protect our law enforcement is upholding the law. Make it so that way they can't be in those streets. This is not just some regular protest. This is a revolution, and we need to see it as such. And we need to hold every single person accountable that is inciting this violence towards our law enforcement. The next is also protecting them with our U.S. military. Look, right now it's in the court system that we can't utilize the National Guard. Unfortunately, one, the judiciary is thinking that they have the authority of the executive in this manner, and they're trying to make decisions for our president. So that's going to continue to be heard in the court, but we do need our military to also protect them.
Okay, so on the point of enforcing law, the Department of Homeland Security said people who dox or threaten or lay hands on officers will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. What are your thoughts on how the current administration is doing in terms of deterring these types of actions through law enforcement?
As we can see every single day, there's another attack. We can see that there's going to be a No Kings rally on this coming Saturday. Look, it's not stopping it, because if you wait until they make an assault on an agent, that's very reactionary. We are not doing proactive investigative work to conduct a complete investigation on all these networks and then go after them. Yes, I know that they invited citizen journalists to the White House to understand the nature of the threat and also these networks, but that should tell you something. Why is it that our federal government has to ask citizen journalists to come in and give them intel when we have three-letter agencies that should be doing that themselves? That kind of shows how broken the system has been and where we need to go. Right now, we're having to utilize citizen journalists to even understand what's actually happening on the ground and also internally in order for us to make any certain arrests or any claims or threat of subversion or violence. So right now, really, in my opinion, if we want to protect this, if we want to stop this from progressing further into the later this year or into next year, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to dismantle them as we would any terrorist organization in any contingency operation outside the United States. And this is not foreign internal defense. This is domestic internal defense against domestic terrorists and communist presence.
Okay, Eamon, I just have one more question here. Is there anything that regular people can do, or would you say this is purely a government problem?
I think really it's to dispel the myths. I think everyone needs to understand that right now, what is impacting or what the actual war is on you and your citizenship. Look, they want complete open borders. They don't agree with national sovereignty. They don't agree with your sovereignty. They don't agree with the state sovereignty. They don't agree with private property rights. All you have to do is read the Communist Manifesto, and you can see exactly what these people want is straight destruction. So what you can do is completely understand the threat first, understand, like reading Victor Davis Hanson's The Dying Citizen, understand or read Jesse Kelly's book, The Anti-Communist Manifesto. Those two books would get you so far ahead in terms of actually understanding the threat. So that way you can actually clearly see it, whether that's on social media platforms, and you can also inform your neighbors that this is not a racist thing that we're doing. Mass deportations is actually impacting and affecting and protecting your citizenship.
Okay, well, Eamon, really interesting stuff. I'm really happy that you shared your insights with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
The plane-carrying Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, heading back to the U.S. after the NATO meeting today, makes an emergency landing in the UK. Big businesses are investing big in America. Stellantis expands its domestic manufacturing. Meta commits to building a new AI data center, and Whirlpool also pledges hundreds of millions of dollars. More of that news after this break.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, "I want to see you." No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, "Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic." A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
For 65 years, Mathis Home has been helping you create the room of your dreams at great values. Come celebrate with anniversary savings store-wide. Check out their amazing selection of upholstered beds. Here's a hot buy. This modern queen bed is covered in a soft, luxurious fabric. It's available in 2 colors for just $5.99. There's over 100 bedrooms in stock, so you're sure to find the style just right for you with fast, free delivery. Come celebrate with 65th anniversary savings at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the U.S. will impose costs on Russia if the Ukraine war doesn't end soon. He made the remarks at a meeting of NATO defense ministers earlier today. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the highlights.
If there is no path to peace in the short term, then the United States, along with our allies, will take the steps necessary to impose costs on Russia for its continued aggression.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth advises Russia to end the fighting in Ukraine. Otherwise, the U.S. will impose costs on Moscow. He says the War Department is ready to do its part in ways only the United States can. He made the remarks at a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group of Kiev's allies at NATO headquarters on Wednesday.
All countries need to translate goals into guns, commitments into capabilities, and pledges into power. That's all that matters, hard power. It's the only thing belligerents actually respect.
He added that the U.S. is willing to deliver more weapons to NATO member countries. Hegseth urged allies to ramp up investments in the prioritized Ukraine requirements list program. This replaced U.S. weapons donations to Ukraine and now requires allies to pay for U.S. weapons deliveries. And Wednesday's meetings aren't only about Ukraine. NATO members Germany, Belgium, Poland, Estonia and Romania all report recent airspace violations. Some of them directly blame Russia.
NATO will implement a number of additional counter-drone measures that will build on and expand and accelerate our ability to counter drones.
NATO and EU member states recently agreed to build a so-called drone wall, which would detect and destroy incoming Russian drones. Germany on Wednesday announced that it will allocate over $11 billion in drones and also strongly support the drone wall.
NATO Chief Mark Rutte has presented a plan to strengthen drone defense. In light of recent incidents, this can only be welcomed. Germany will, of course, also make a visible contribution here.
The German defense minister added that Berlin will deploy 2 Eurofighter jets in Poland from December to March to patrol airspace. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
The plane on which War Secretary Pete Hegseth was on had an emergency while flying back to the United States. They were over the Atlantic Ocean when the incident took place and were forced to turn around and land in the UK. This map shows where the plane was before it turned around to land in the UK. According to Flight Radar 24, the plane suddenly lost altitude and dropped down to only 10,000 feet. It's not clear yet what caused the sudden drop. According to the Department of War, the plane made an unscheduled landing in the United Kingdom due to a crack in the aircraft windshield. The plane landed based on standard procedures and everyone on board, including Secretary Hegseth, is safe. Senate Republicans have shifted their strategy to reopen the government and will now pursue full-year appropriation bills in order to end the shutdown. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has more on the Republicans' new approach.
Today, if it weren't for the bold leadership of President Trump helping us to protect our military, everyone needs to understand that 1.3 million active duty service members would be missing a paycheck. They'll get their check, thankfully, because President Trump has shown strong leadership.
The Trump administration has reallocated $8 billion of unused research and development funds from the Department of War to pay active duty service members during the government shutdown. Senate Republicans have now teed up a vote for this Thursday on the House-passed defense appropriation bill to try and secure annual funding for the Department of War during the government shutdown.
Republicans want to pay the troops, and we have shown that with our actions and our votes now 9 times. And the Democrats want to use them as hostages to extort $1.5 trillion in new, unserious partisan spending that we just won't go along with.
The new Republican strategy in Congress is to continue the regular appropriations process despite Democrats' intransigence to reopen the government. Democrats, on the other hand, insist on their messaging and demanding that their policy priorities be met in order to reopen government.
We are ready, we are willing, and we are able to negotiate a bipartisan spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people. Reopen the government and decisively address the Republican health care crisis.
The Senate has already, on a bipartisan basis, passed 3 out of the 12 appropriations bills and is prepared to vote on a 4th one this Thursday.
Mr. President, Democrats attempt to defend their funding blockade by complaining that Republicans won't negotiate. But what exactly is there to negotiate? Negotiation happens when you have 2 sides, each with its own demands. Republicans have no demands.
The vote on the defense appropriations bill this Thursday also served as a pressure point on moderate Democrats who have already said they want to see the regular appropriations process play out to fund government. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Trump signed a memo to pay active members of the military for their service during the government shutdown. Active duty military personnel are scheduled to receive paychecks today. Trump's memo is intended to bridge the gap until the government reopens. The funds used for military pay and allowances will come from funds already appropriated by Congress and still available from the 2026 fiscal year. The Supreme Court today once again heard arguments over Louisiana's 6th congressional map, which was revised to address racial packing earlier this year. The court today considered why a lower court blocked the revised map. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
The Supreme Court on Wednesday heard 2 cases with opposite views on what role race should play when drawing congressional district lines. It's not the first time the court considered race in the state of Louisiana's map. In 2024, the High Court first reviewed a challenge to Louisiana's 6th congressional district map over claims that it was unfair to black voters. A court of appeals had ordered that the map be redrawn, which the legislature did. The new map included 2 black voter districts instead of just 1, and a majority of Supreme Court justices approved it for the 2024 election. Meanwhile, a new slate of voters, calling themselves non-African Americans, said the state relied too heavily on race when they redrew the map, and a panel of federal judges agreed. The Supreme Court decided in June that both cases should be restored to the calendar for re-argument. The attorney for the black voters argued to keep the revised map.
6 appellate judges affirmed findings that Louisiana, in the face of extreme racially polarized voting, packed and cracked black voters, and it rejected 7 non-dilutive maps in favor of one that would give its 58% declining white electorate entrenched control over 83% of the congressional districts. Louisiana's creation of a district to remedy that discrimination and to ensure that Black Louisianans have an equal opportunity to participate in the process is constitutional.
The attorney for Louisiana argued that the revised map was based on racial stereotyping.
And it requires drawing in enough members of a minority race to sufficiently augment their voting strength. Embedded within these express targets are racial stereotypes that this court has long criticized. They assume, for example, that a Black voter, simply because he is Black, must think like other Black voters, share the same interests, and prefer the same political candidates. And this stereotyping system has no logical endpoint.
He added that race-based districting has placed states in impossible situations which require more racial discrimination. The attorney for the non-African Americans also argued about stereotypes. He said the Voter Rights Act didn't justify the widespread stereotyping of American voters based on race, and that it violates the 14th and 15th Amendments. The justices now face the complicated task of deciding whether or not to reshape how race is considered in redistricting. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
A public safety crackdown in Washington, D.C. on sex offenders failing to comply with registration laws. Today, U.S. Attorney General for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, called on the D.C. Council to step up protections.
Registration alone does not protect the victims. Of utmost concern to me is the fact that Washington, D.C. has not required that these predators, whether they be pedophiles or sex offenders in general, are not mandated by any law to live away from a school, a playground, a rec center, a children's hospital.
Pirro shared the results of a 7-week operation in which federal officials conducted compliance checks on nearly 900 sex offenders in D.C. 25 were in violation of their sex offender notification requirements. 9 of those are Class A sex offenders, meaning they have been convicted of the highest level of sex crimes. Pirro shared maps showing that many of the offenders in D.C. are living within 1,000 feet of child-friendly locations. Pirro said she is shocked that Washington, D.C. does not have a law requiring offenders to stay away from locations children frequent. She noted 30 states in the U.S. do have such laws in place and called on the D.C. Council to pass one. Tensions continue to flare in Chicago as the legal fight over deploying the National Guard plays out in the courts. An appeals court recently ruled that the Trump administration can keep federalized Guard members in Illinois, but cannot deploy them. For a take on the situation from Chicago residents, NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with the organization Chicago Flips Red.
Flipping Chicago Red, we're flipping Chicago Red.
Chicago Flips Red defines itself as a grassroots movement aimed at empowering Black communities and advocating for economic and political independence. Co-founder Zoe Lee says her activism began after the city demolished her family's building in 2017.
Finally, when I realized I was going to continue to get ignored while I was there, I told them that if they did not settle this case, I would flip Chicago Red.
Lee argues that Democratic leadership has failed Black communities in Chicago.
This is a Democratic stronghold, blue stronghold, dictatorship. Everything that they say Donald Trump is exactly what this machine is here. And everybody's connected, from the judges, the lawyers, the prosecutors, the city council, the teachers union, the police union. Is just one big fraternity sorority that's dedicated to the machine.
She supports bringing in the National Guard to Chicago.
We have a genocide in our own community, in the city of Chicago, on the south side and the west side, and it's been there, it's normalized.
Lee says President Trump is the only one addressing those issues.
And it's unfortunate that that Trump has to do it, but Trump has to do it. He can't help that he's white. He can't help that he came from a privileged life. You know, he can't help that he was a businessman. He can't help, but he can't help any of that. But what he saw was, I think, what anybody else saw was an issue with the whole United States of America. We were going to lose this country.
She also criticizes the city's handling of the migrant crisis, saying it's displaced longtime residents.
We're losing businesses by the hour. Regular Chicago citizens can't even get an apartment. They can't even get a house because everything is designed to only take care of these illegals because the city is paying it.
Lee believes illegal immigration is being weaponized politically against Trump.
They're using illegal aliens, but they're all putting it on Donald Trump, who literally inherited a crisis, and he's the only one that does not blame it on it. He doesn't say, well, I inherited this. Nah, I'm going in there and I'm going to take care of it.
She also accuses state leaders of ignoring community concerns.
And we don't even know. And then when we go to our elected officials like Pritzker and Brandon Johnson and Kwame Raoul, they act like what we're saying is a lie. They're literally getting on TV, doing these press conferences, and acting like everything that we're saying is an outright lie, knowing that everything we're saying is true.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker recently warned that federal agents in Chicago could face future prosecution, speaking on Fox News.
The tables will turn someday. These people should recognize.
Homeland Security criticized those remarks, calling threats to prosecute law enforcement for enforcing the law disgusting. The agency said Pritzker's rhetoric is fueling attacks on federal agents. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Louisiana is taking a stand against foreign AI threats. Governor Jeff Landry signed an executive order on Monday banning Chinese AI tools like DeepSeek from schools, universities, and state agencies. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has this report.
The order targets AI systems run by hostile foreign governments like the Chinese Communist regime. It references national security and privacy concerns. Landry pointed to programs like DeepSeek, which federal investigators say can spread propaganda and transfer Americans' personal data to China. The governor said the move is about putting Louisiana and the U.S. first by protecting students, state agencies, and sensitive data from potential spying. He said, quote, as technology advances, so do the threats, adding that this order is designed to safeguard both people and national security.
And for more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune in to China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on NTD. Stellantis is making its biggest U.S. investment ever, $13 billion to expand domestic manufacturing over the next 4 years. The automaker says the move will boost U.S. vehicle production by 50% and create more than 5,000 jobs across Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. Stellantis will launch new vehicles, including the next-generation Dodge Durango in Detroit and an all-new midsize truck in Toledo, Ohio. The automaker also plans to reopen its Belvidere assembly plant in Illinois, adding 3,300 jobs and producing Jeep Cherokee and Compass models. The company will refresh 19 products across its U.S. plants through 2029. The expansion comes as Stellantis works to offset billions in tariffs on Canadian and Mexican production implemented under the Trump administration to boost domestic production. Everything is bigger in Texas, including Meta's new data center. The facility can scale to a 1 gigawatt site, which is enough energy to power a city the size of San Francisco for a day. This will make it one of the largest planned data center campuses in the U.S. Meta Platforms announced that it would invest $1.5 billion for the data center in El Paso. This is Meta's third facility of its kind in the state and the 29th in the world. The social media giant is expanding its infrastructure to support AI workloads. Meta expects the new data center to come online in 2028. Once operational, the new facility is projected to create about 100 jobs. A heavy-duty investment set for Whirlpool. The manufacturer has pledged $300 million to ramp up its U.S. laundry manufacturing operations in Ohio. This is expected to create up to 600 new jobs between its facilities in Clyde and Marion. Whirlpool said it's positioning itself for increased production of its next-generation washers and dryers. The company added that this is one in a series of strategic commitments meant to grow its manufacturing footprint in America. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer promises to release evidence submitted in a now collapsed Chinese spy case. The case relied on evidence that the UK considers China a national security threat, but prosecutors say they didn't receive it. Stay tuned for that and more after this break.
My name's Stacy, I'm 57, and I was adopted in 2020.
We were adopted in 2019.
And we were adopted in 2021.
We had a house, and it sounds crazy, but it wasn't a home. The one thing that Jake and Emma brought is it became a home.
When I met Dakota, he had just turned 14.
You weren't there for the first this and the first that. I missed the first words, but we got a lot of other firsts.
Watching her say, oh my God, I cannot believe I got my license. And she's like, I passed. And I'm like, girl.
See them grow. It is.
They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
You and you.
Kids in the middle.
What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete, but it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
President Trump is now having a press conference in the Oval Office with FBI Director Kash Patel. Let's take a look.
Appreciate it. But we're here for a different reason. It's called Operation Summer Heat, which is an appropriate term in light of what we're doing. And early yesterday morning, I returned from the Middle East, where we celebrated a historic agreement to end years of suffering and conflict. Amazing. Every country came together. I mean, even the enemies came out and totally endorsed it. Everybody. I've never seen anything like it. Nobody's seen anything like it. And just as we are forging peace and stability abroad, we're also restoring peace and safety and stability at home. And you see that in Washington, D.C., maybe better than any place, because we got there, and within 12 days it was very good. And within 30 days, it's been as safe as any city in the country. It's been great. Took out 1,700 people, got them out. These are career criminals in many cases, and people that shouldn't have been allowed in by the Biden administration. Historically, the summer months have been a time when violent crime soar, as you know, but not under President Trump. Today, we're announcing the results of a sweeping law enforcement effort known as Operation Summer Heat. We were in many cities that people didn't know about. We kept it a little quiet, and it had a big impact, and you'll hear that in a second. But over the past few months, FBI offices in all 50 states made crushing violent crime a top enforcement priority. That's what they did, rounding up and arresting thousands of the most violent and dangerous criminals. And these are among the most dangerous and violent people in the world. They were allowed, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, they were allowed in by a very foolish, actually stupid, open border policy. Just anybody could have come in. They emptied out their jails, their prisons, their mental institutions. They emptied them into our country. And the people behind me have done an incredible job, because if we didn't have that administration, it would have been so much easier. They allowed millions of people in this country that shouldn't have been allowed, including over 11,000 murderers, half of whom murdered more than one person. And many of them are gone now, or they're put in prison, because we don't want to have them come back. So we literally put them in our prison, which we don't want to do. But we bring them back to their countries. Working with state and local partners, the FBI arrested over 8,000 violent criminals during the course of this period. In major cities like in New Orleans, Nashville, we saw a 250% increase in arrests. And we really went after the bad ones. These include 725 individuals wanted for violent crimes against children and murderers. These arrests are in addition to the work of our historic federal task forces that Make D.C. Safe Task Force has been unbelievable. I mean, the job they've done, it's incredible. And it's been so nice, because so many people, they're going out to dinner and they're having dinners. They didn't go out for 4 years. And now they're going out 3 times a week. Restaurants are opening. Restaurants are full. And usually that means a lot of good things. But restaurants that were closed are now opening up. and everybody's happy. It's nobody's ever seen anything like it, actually, and everybody feels safe. You can have a child walk right through the middle of Washington, D.C., and nothing's going to happen. We were losing more than one person a week in Washington. They're being killed on an average of over one a week. The Make D.C. Safe Task Force has been incredible, and the Make Memphis Safe Task Force is having very similar results. It's much earlier, but we've been there for a week and a half, but I'm hearing the results are pretty incredible, and you'll hear about that. They're mobilizing more than 20 federal agencies for the largest law enforcement operation targeting violent criminals in American history. As a result of these efforts, violent crime declined nearly 20% nationwide compared to the same period last year, and it was the safest and most peaceful summer in 2 decades. And honestly, we haven't really even gotten going yet. If we didn't have to fight all of these radical left governors, we could have had Chicago taken care of, as an example. They had, in a short period of time, 4,000 murders in Chicago, and we have to listen to this man stand up and say that we're bad people. And the people of Chicago are walking around with MAGA hats. You have women, beautiful black women, walking around with MAGA hats. Please let the president in, and we don't care how he does it. They're not interested in National Guard or Army, Navy, bring them in, Marines, bring in the Marines. They just want the crime to stop, and more so because of the success that we had in D.C. I think if we didn't have that success, nobody would even believe it. So I want to congratulate all of the incredible law enforcement professionals joining us today, especially Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's terrific, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is a fantastic legal talent. He really is. He's a great guy, too. And, of course, FBI Director Kash Patel. They have worked so hard on this and other things. Since the start of the administration, the FBI has arrested over 23,000 violent criminals, more than double the number arrested in the final year of the Biden disaster. The FBI has also destroyed or severely disrupted more than 170 organized criminal enterprises and gangs, 1,600 of the most violent gangs, and confiscated over 6,000 illegal firearms. And they've tracked down and arrested 4 fugitives on the most wanted list, 4 of the most wanted. Actually, 2 of them were the most wanted fugitives in the world. There's still much more work to be done, which is why the FBI continues to work alongside the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of War to defend. And Pete Hegseth has been fantastic, by the way, on this too, on other things, but on this too. To defend law and order and combat violent crime, arrest illegal aliens, and make American cities the safest in the world. And when I campaigned, I talked about crime, but I never knew that we were going to get into it like we did. You know, I mean, I used to watch these cities with the murders. Chicago recently had one deal where they had 11 murders in one weekend, and they said, well, yeah, but it was a holiday weekend. They actually told me that was the reason, like it was okay because it was a holiday. It was Labor Day. These people are the worst. They really have to, they better, I tell you what, the people in Chicago and the people in places like that can be fixed. At some point, it gets to where you can't fix it anymore. It's too far gone. And we have some cities like that. But these are great cities that can be fixed. I'm going to be strongly recommending, at the request of government officials, which is always nice, that you start looking at San Francisco. I think we can make San Francisco. There's one of our great cities 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now it's a mess. And we have great support in San Francisco, so I'd like to recommend that for inclusion, maybe in your next group. You'll get great support. Every American deserves to live in a community where they're not afraid of being mugged, murdered, robbed, raped, assaulted, or shot. And that's exactly what our administration is working to deliver. I didn't realize I was going to make this such a big factor in the administration. I didn't really campaign. I campaigned on crime, but I never thought we'd go into every city and take a really safe city that we've all been living with for years and make them safe. And now it's like a passion for me, and it's a passion for the people behind me. So I didn't get elected. I did get elected for crime, but I didn't get elected for what we're doing. This is many, many steps above it. I want to thank Stephen Miller, who's right back in the audience right there. I'd love to have him. I love watching him on television. I'd love to have him come up and explain his true feelings. But maybe not his truest feelings. That might be going a little bit too far. But Stephen, thank you for doing an unbelievable job. And the people of this country love you, I'll tell you, and they love what you say about crime and stopping crime. So now I'd like to ask Director Patel to say a few words, and then Pam and Todd also. And I just want to congratulate them. This is an amazing thing. And we're just at the start. We're going to go into other cities that we're not talking about purposely. We're getting ready to go in. And when they go in, like Cash as an example, told me that people didn't even know. 5 months ago, they went into Chicago, and they started doing a lot of work in Chicago. And we brought the numbers down a little bit. And but that really was just preparatory work for what we're going to do with the surge. We're going to have a surge of strong, good people, patriots, and they're going to go in, they straighten it all out. So a lot of these cities we're already working on, but we don't do it with a big flavor. But in a little while, you're going to see some numbers that you're not going to believe. And I think you'll probably start with Memphis, because I'm hearing the numbers are much quicker than we even thought possible. But again, D.C. it speaks for itself. Chicago is going to be okay. We're going to save Chicago. And I told you, and I told them, a very respected man, the head of the Union Pacific, said, "Sir, save Chicago. It can be saved." And the way he said it, it was like, can you believe it? We're trying to save Chicago. But I understood exactly what he wants, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to save all of our cities, and we're going to make them essentially crime-free, like other countries have crime-free. If you go all over the world, you go to the world, you hear Afghanistan and you hear all these different places. Our crime in certain cities is worse than anything they can even imagine. And we're not going to have that any longer. It's going to stop, and it stops right here. Cash, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I'd like to do is just highlight some of the outstanding work that the men and women of the FBI have been doing. And thanks to your brave leadership and the mandate you were given by the American people not only defend the homeland but crush violent crime, you tasked us with our great partners at the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General to start making arrests and bring prosecutions and safeguard our cities. And you said it, this is just the beginning. In just 7 months, I hope the media takes a look at every one of these charts, because these are the best numbers for fighting crime in U.S. history, and it's only 7 months in. And to do that, our vehicle to do it of choice was Operation Summer Heat, which the FBI architected to go after violent criminals. And in just a 3-month span, you had 8,700 arrests of violent criminals. You had 2,200 firearms seized off the streets permanently to safeguard our communities. You had 421 kilograms of fentanyl seized. Just to put that in perspective, that's enough to kill 55 million Americans alone. You had 45,000 kilograms of cocaine seized. And thanks to our Department of Justice partners, you had 2,100 indictments in 3 months, from June to September alone. Mr. President, that in and of itself would be historic for a 4-year presidency. You did that in 7 months because you let good cops be cops, and you partnered us with the right people at the Department of Justice to put the handcuffs on and bring them to court and put them in prison. And if that weren't enough, when you look at the year, for the entire 7-month period that we're talking about here, if you look at the past 4 years of the Biden administration, 16,000, 17,000, 15,000, 15,000. That's the number of arrests year over year of violent felons in this country for the Biden administration. Mr. President, in 7 months, you have 28,600 arrests of violent felons in just 7 months alone, because of your leadership and the dedication of the men and women at the FBI who want to go out there and do the job they were prevented from doing because that department used to be weaponized and politicized. And this is what happens when you take out the fangs of weaponization. This number is historic by every metric. 28,000 people have been arrested, violent felons alone. And then when you go over there and look at some of these charts, if you don't mind, I'll just hop over here. Look at the metrics for not just violent crime, but the homeland. Mr. President, during your administration, the FBI has found and located 5,400 children. That is a 30% increase year to date over the last administration. Violent crimes against children arrests alone are up 10%. Gang arrests are up 210% in the last 7 months alone. And transnational organized crime, which Stephen Miller has been a great partner in, is up over 12% alone. These numbers are historic just as a snapshot. But Just so people don't think we're focusing on violent crime alone, the national security mission, Mr. President, under your leadership has never been stronger. We have gone after espionage activities against our main counterparts in China, Russia, and Iran. In China alone, we've had over a 50% increase in espionage arrests alone and prosecutions. In Iran, we have had a 50% increase, again, in espionage cases. And in Russia, we've had a 33% increase in espionage cases alone. When it comes to counterterrorism, year to date, we have 125 arrests this year versus 100 last year to date alone. And when it comes to the cyber criminal activities, which are some of the largest enterprises plaguing everyday Americans, we at the FBI have put out a mission to go after cyber criminals like never before. Last year, they had in total 191. This year, you already have 252 arrests. 52 arrests of violent cyber criminals who are stealing from senior citizens, who are violating our children's rights and freedoms, and who are violating everyday Americans. These programs are record. And two of the things I'll finish with that I'm most proud of, Mr. President, this FBI. Fentanyl. As you know, it's a scourge that is killing our youth, 100,000 plus a year. To date, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl. That's enough lethal doses to kill 127 million Americans alone. To date. And if that weren't enough, Mr. President, you said we have to go after the worst of the worst. And you empowered our Department of Justice, our Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and the Deputy Director at the FBI, led the charge, not just on summer heat, but he also led the charge in the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. These people have been on the run for years. And in 7 months, you captured not one, not two, not three, but 4 of the FBI's most top 10 fugitives. 4. And just to put that in perspective, Mr. President, the Biden administration captured 4 in all of 4 years. You're on 7, and we're going to get to 10. We're going to get to 10 of 10. This includes a lady who murdered her 6-year-old handicapped child and fled to India. We got her in 2 months. This includes a narco trafficker. This includes a sex trafficker. This includes another first-degree murderer and gangbanger. These people were on the run because of the prior administration's reckless policies that destroyed our communities, and you came in and with a mandate said, go after the worst of the worst. This is just the beginning. This is what happens when you let good cops be good cops at the FBI. Mr. President, I just want to thank you for your incredible leadership, our brave partnership with prosecutors who know how to bring cases and make sure these arrests stick. And that's what the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General have led the charge across this country, because arrests without prosecutions are meaningless. We are deterring criminals from doing this activity. We are preventing criminals from coming into America, and we are absolutely crushing violent crime like never before and defending this homeland, sir. And not to mention, I almost forgot this one, it took you, sir, 2 weeks to get the Abbey Gate bomber. Joe Biden had 4 years to look for him. You got him in 2 weeks, thanks to the interagency effort by the FBI and the CIA, went to Pakistan, and now 13 brave warriors who were senselessly murdered because of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. They have justice, their families have a peace of mind, and we're going to continue to find the others, Mr. President. On behalf of the FBI, sir, I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Great job. Very good. Very impressive.
President Trump, the men and women of law enforcement say 2 things to me repeatedly. First, you have taken the handcuffs off them and let them do their jobs, and you let cops be cops. That's why all this is happening. The director, the deputy director are working around the clock. All of these great men and women in the FBI, they have families at home, and they are working during a government shutdown right now. Many of them have small children. Many of them, I was talking to an agent this morning, many of them have babies at home, and they are working around the clock to not only keep our country, but our world safe. And that's what Operation Summer Heat did. Thank you, Director, and to the Deputy Director for everything you did on behalf of the Department of Justice, and you're going to continue to keep doing. And they set the stage for what we're doing in Memphis. You're going to hear a lot more about that, our joint task force next week, but they set the stage for Memphis. And last night alone in Memphis, there were almost 70 arrests. There were 12 guns seized, and there was a 70-year-old man arrested as a result of our operation in Memphis who raped a child under the age of 3. That one case makes everything we're doing worthwhile. So thank you all for being here on behalf of both of us. Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you. Todd, you want to say something?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. So this is a great day, and I think there's stats that the director talked about which are important, but I want to give 2 examples of what summer heat has done that actually will apply hopefully to everybody in this room. The first is for over 4 years during the last administration, there was a hotel in a town, the middle of a town in Alaska, that was being run as a drug den. There were over 1,000 calls to 911 over four and a half year period. There were multiple violent crimes, drug dealers, overdoses, and murders at this one hotel, ruining a community. Summer Heat went in there. It's not only arrested all the participants that were controlling the hotel, but seized the hotel. And so that's one example of what summer heat means to everyday Americans that just want to live in peace. The second example is a large narcotics trafficking group that was selling fentanyl in the state of Washington. They were shipping fentanyl and using commercial aircraft, putting fentanyl pills and powder in suitcases, flying them from the southwest border, mostly Arizona, all the way to Washington. It had been going on for an extremely long time, and the entire organization was arrested. And I say those two examples because it's easy to look at the board and see 1,000 arrests. How much different is our communities now compared to the past 4 years? But there's actual life examples. Every one of these arrests means that our streets are safer, and that's because of the work of this administration, of President Trump and Director Patel. So I will tell you, Attorney General Bondi and I are together every day with Director Patel, figuring out ways that we can continue to do this work, and it's not going to stop. Like the Attorney General said, and like the President said, this is just the beginning, or phase one, or a start, whatever you want to say, but it will continue on. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you very much, Director Patel.
And Mr. President, just one last thank you from the men and women at the FBI. You found a way to get these individuals paid during a government shutdown, our 1811 agents. So on behalf of the FBI, it's a great debt that we owe you, sir. They're now allowed to pay for their families, so thank you.
And the military. Good.
That's right.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, please? Brian, go ahead.
First of all, I know the feedback I'm getting from the American people, and they want to say thank you. Law and order is not an option in this country. It's a mandate. So I know the American people thank you for that. In terms of the guns that have been taken off the street, do you have a number of how many guns were taken away from someone that had a prior felony or a previous crime that perhaps we can prosecute that? Because I know that wasn't the case under Joe Biden.
We don't take guns off the streets of people that are allowed to have guns. So every gun that we're taking off the street is because it belongs to somebody who is not allowed to have it. Could be a felon, could be somebody who hears illegally. There's all sorts of conditions. But if there's a gun taken off the streets by the FBI, it's because the person who has it is not allowed to. It's not somebody who's lawfully allowed to have it. So every single one of those guns were taken off of people that aren't allowed to have them.
And not including the FBI, all of the other agencies. ATF alone since January 20th has removed over 25,000 illegal guns off our streets just since President Trump's been in office.
And Mr. President, if I could follow up on that, could there be any further conversation to have national concealed carry apply to actual DC? Like if you had a driver's license in Texas and you had a permit, of course you could drive.
Well, as you know, they've been talking about that for a long time. It's an interesting question. A lot of people feel strongly both ways, but we are talking about that, Brian. Thank you.
Mr. President, on Venezuelan boats, I want to ask you, why not have the Coast Guard stop them, which it is empowered by law to do? You know, this way you can confirm who's on the boat and ensure that they're doing what you suspect.
Because we've been doing that for 30 years, and it has been totally ineffective. They have faster boats. Some of these boats are seriously, I mean, they're world-class speedboats, but they're not faster than missiles. But we've been trying to do that for years, and so much of the drugs, 25-30%, would come in through the seas. Right now we have, I would say, none coming in through the seas. In fact, I don't know about the fishing industry. If you want to go fishing, a lot of people aren't deciding to even go fishing. We've almost totally stopped it by sea. Now we'll stop it by land.
What's the next
But
step?
it never worked. It never worked when you did it in a very politically correct manner.
What's the next step in this war on cartels, and are you considering options, are you considering strikes on land?
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control. We've had a couple of days where there isn't a boat to be found. And that I view that as a good thing, not a bad thing. But we had tremendous amounts coming in by boats, by very expensive boats. You know, they have a lot of money, very fast, very expensive boats that were pretty big. And the way you look at it is every boat that we knock out, we save 25,000 American lives. So every time you see a boat and you feel badly, you say, wow, that's rough. It is rough, but if you lose 3 people and save 25,000 people, these are people that are killing our population. Every boat is saving 25,000 lives, and you can see it. The boats get hit, and you see that fentanyl all over the ocean. It's like floating in bags. It's all over the place, and it's a tremendous. We're saving tremendous amounts of lives. Yeah,
Mr. President,
on that issue.
I know you've talked about, I have a question for you, and then I also have a question for Director Patel. I know you talked about having some distaste for Boston recently. Is this one of the cities that you might be looking into, and can you give us a hint about other cities that you might be?
You're saying for where? For where?
For Boston.
Yeah, well, Boston has a bad mayor who at least is a reasonable IQ person. You know, most of them are low IQ. But, and they're so bad. I mean, what's going on in Chicago is just, you'd think the guy would say, hey, look, we have a problem, Mr. President. Could you come in and straighten it out? We could have that done in a month if we had their cooperation. It's going to be done anyway, but we could have it done in a month. Yeah, Boston, she's got 4 areas that are, wrong. And, somebody said, would we think about taking the World Cup away from Boston if they don't straighten it out? And the answer is yes, we have the right to do that with FIFA. So if we think that LA is going to be bad, or we think that applies a little bit to the Olympics too, but we'll talk about FIFA first. FIFA is very hot. If we think there's any reason that, whether it's Boston or anywhere else, that they're not doing their job, we're going to take those World Cup games and move them someplace else.
Thank you. And then Director Patel, there's been so many conspiracy theories swirling around about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Do you have any updates for us, especially in light of all the online content that everyone's been talking about?
The only thing we deal with at the FBI and the Department of Justice is facts. And we delivered at record speed a manhunt to capture Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin in 33 hours. And if you put that in perspective to Luigi Mangione with the Boston bomber, they took them 5 days and a police officer lost their life in their manhunt. We are running out absolutely every single lead, and the best thing we can do to honor my friend Charlie Kirk's life is to make sure that everyone involved is prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and that's what we're focused on, investigating the facts, not trading in conspiracy theories.
Okay.
Mr. President, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In light of China's export curbs on rare earths, do you view India as a reliable partner going forward? And are you planning to meet Prime Minister Modi in Malaysia? Are you open to talks in terms of
Yeah,
trade?
sure. He's a friend of mine. We have a great relationship. He just said that 2 days ago, as you know. We have a great relationship. No, we were not happy with him buying oil from Russia, because that lets Russia continue on with this ridiculous war where they've lost 1.5 million people, by the way. Russia's lost 1.5 million people, soldiers mostly. This is a war that should have never started, but it's a war that Russia should have won in the first week, and they're going into the 4th year. And I want to see it stop. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop. Now I got to get China to do the same thing. That is relatively easy compared to what we just did over the last week in the Middle East. Middle East was 3,000 years, and we got it done. This is 3 years, and I think we'll get it done. I think that President Putin, I think he wants to get it done. We'll see. There's a great animosity between him and Zelensky. You probably have noticed, right? And I think it's hurting the process. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, thank you. Curious, why did you authorize the CIA to go into Venezuela? And is there more information you can share about these strikes on the alleged
Well, I can't
drug
do
busts in
that,
the
but
Caribbean?
I authorized for 2 reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And as soon as I heard that, I said, a lot of these countries, they're not the only country, but they're the worst abuser. And they've allowed thousands and thousands of prisoners, mental institution, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, emptied out into the United States. We're bringing them back, but that's a really bad, and they did it at a level that probably not, many countries have done it, but not like Venezuela. They were down and dirty. And the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela. And a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that. But we're going to stop them by land also.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer? But I think Venezuela is feeling heat, but I think a lot of other countries are feeling heat too. We're not going to let this country, our country, be ruined because other people want to drop, as you say, their worst. They have given us their worst. They've loaded up our country with prisoners, with mentally ill people that are seriously ill, criminally ill, and we're not going to take it. And so, I mean, it's just one of those things. And I can tell you, we've taken care of the sea. There's nobody, and we're watching. We're watching. And if we see it, we'll save it. Yeah, please.
On the ships, though, sir, there are Republicans and Democrats up on the Hill concerned that in the briefings they've gotten about those attacks, they're not necessarily getting information about who was on them and what exactly was on those ships. Can you ensure that?
But they are given information that they were loaded up with drugs, and that's the thing that matters. When they're loaded up with drugs, they're fair game. And every one of those ships they're not ships, they're boats, they're speedboats. They're extremely fast, record-setting type speedboats. They cost a lot of money, and they have a lot of money because they're drug sellers. But they know one thing, and they all have the same thing in common. There's drug dust. They call it drug dust. They call it fentanyl dust all over the boat after those bombs go off, and you can take along.
Attack them though that they're a
We know before. We know when they go out. We know we have much information about each boat that goes out. Deep, strong information. Yeah, please.
Sir, you're going to have Volodymyr Zelensky here this week. What is your message at this stage of the war for him? And shy of tomahawks,
to who is that?
For Zelensky.
Yeah.
And shy of tomahawks for Ukraine. Are you considering other options, and will you speak with Vladimir Putin about
No, we're looking at other options. We are. President Zelensky's coming in. I'm not a fan of the war. I'm not a fan of the way it started. It should have never happened. It wouldn't have started if I were president. The election was rigged. And because of that, we lost a lot of lives have been lost because of that war. Not American lives, but if I can save a lot of lives, that's why I'm in it. I want to save lives. I've had 8 wars. The Prime Minister of Pakistan got up the other day, said so beautifully, says, you saved millions of lives. He told that to a group of people right in this office. He said the president saved millions of lives. And I think what he's referring to is the fact that that would have been with India, a nuclear war. That was getting very close. You know, 7 planes, they don't talk about it, but 7 aircraft were shot down. In fact, we have the new ambassador to India right here. They're well represented. You better represent us, not them, okay? But Sergio's going to do a great job. He's going to do a great job. But no, we'll be talking about the war with him, and we'll be talking about, I mean, they want to go offensive. I'll make a determination on that, but they would like to go offensive, you know that, and we'll have to make a determination.
Can I follow up a question? Given you have the FBI director and attorney general here today, Jim Jordan has asked Jack Smith to appear in front of the House Judiciary.
You mean deranged, Jack? He's a deranged individual, yeah.
He's asked him to.
Well, they should. I'm surprised it takes so long. You know, we're talking about violent crime. What about the crime against a political opponent? That's what we have to talk about, too.
We'd like to understand the full extent to which the Biden-Harris Justice Department weaponized federal law enforcement. What do you think the committee will find out, Mr. Smith?
I think it was the worst weaponization of a political opponent in the history of the world, let alone this country. And I hope that everybody's, you know, they're involved in it. I'm not. I'm the one that had to suffer through it and ultimately win. But what they did was criminal. Deranged Jack Smith, in my opinion, is a criminal. And I noticed his interviewer was, I think that was Weissman. And I hope they're going to look into Weissman, too. Weissman's a bad guy. And he had somebody in Lisa, who was his puppet, worked in the office really as the top person. And I think that she should be looked at very strongly. There was tremendous criminal activity having to do. If we don't have fair elections in this country, we're not going to have a country. And I've said it from the beginning, fair elections and borders. And we need also fair press, because if you don't have fair press, it's very tough. And we've got the strongest border of anybody. Nobody has a border. We have a border where the numbers just came out again. You saw 0 people came in illegally. Now, we do take people into our country legally, but 0 people. But, you know, you're talking about a different subject. You're talking about political crime. They have committed massive political crime. I hope they're looking at Shifty Schiff. I hope they're looking at all these people. And I'm allowed to find out. I'm allowed to, you know, I'm, in theory, the chief law enforcement officer. But I have a very good, talented group. This is about something else. But I hope they're looking at political crime, because there's never been so much political crime against a political opponent as what I had to go through. They raided my house in Florida. It was an illegal raid. I have a lawsuit that was doing well. And when I became president, I said, I'm sort of suing myself. I don't know. How do you settle the lawsuit? I'll say, give me X dollars, right? And I don't know what to do with the lawsuit. It's a great lawsuit. And now I won. It sort of looks bad. I'm suing myself, right? So I don't know. But that was a lawsuit that was very strong, very powerful. They raided illegally my house in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. They went through the drawers of my young son. They went through all of the cabinets and drawers of the First Lady. She walked in, she said, wow, what happened? Because she's very meticulous, and this wasn't so meticulous as she looked into the drawers and she saw everything a mess. It's what they did against a person that just got out of office. And then you look at these corrupt people. You look at Hunter Biden. You look at the signature. As an example, the Europen. I just signed so many different things. An admiral, a 4-star general. I'm signing them left and right, the commissions. And by the way, I want to compliment John Thune and also Mike, our great speaker. But John Thune, all of a sudden I'm getting these things by the hundreds. I was getting one every 2 weeks. It would have been 4 years before you got them in more. You would have had some that didn't even get in, all because of Democrat obstruction. So John Thune did a great job. I must have signed 200 into the administration. We're just about caught up. It's amazing. And so compliments to John. He had to do some things that were very tough to do that he didn't want to do, but he was forced to do it by the Democrats. And as far as the shutdown's concerned, this is a Democrat Schumer shutdown. And he's trying to do it to get relevance back into the party because he's a loser. I've known him all his life. He's always been sort of a loser, but an intelligent one. But I think he's losing IQ points with time. I think that happens. I hope it hasn't happened with me. I know if it did, you guys will let me know about it very quickly.
Question on violent crime, sir. Here in D.C., a judge has given the 2 teenagers that beat up ex-Doge staffer Big Balls probation.
It's incredible.
And no jail time. Is this justice?
Jeanine Pirro is doing a fantastic job, and she is beside herself because you have these radical left judges that they beat the hell out of this guy. And there was many people against this one guy who was really trying to protect his girlfriend. He didn't want his hooded over the door but they really beat him up badly. That just happened, right? Yes. Wow, that's terrible. I think the judge should be ashamed of himself. That's a big problem. You know, they can do their job and then they go into a court and the people are protected by these, I don't know where they come from. Where do these people come from? Where do the judges come from? I want to compliment on behalf of Pam and Todd and all of us because, Cash, I think that Jeanine has done a fantastic job. And the case I heard was like flawless. It's a flawless case. They have them on tape. They have everything. And then a judge gives them a little probation. These are rough guys. And they're young. And if that happens, they're going to grow up. They're going to be real bad. They're going to cause a lot of problems. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
So, Sergio Gore has just gotten back from India. What were the conversations like with Prime Minister Modi and the other?
I think they were great. He reported to me that he's a great man, you know. Modi is a great man. That he loves Trump. Now, I don't know if the word love, I don't want you to take that any different. I don't want to destroy his political career, okay? But you have to understand, I've watched India for years. It's an incredible country. And every single year you'd have a new leader. I mean, some would be in there for a few months. And this was year after year after year. And my friend has been there now for a long time. And he's assured me there will be no oil purchased from Russia. I don't know, maybe that's a breaking story. Can I say that? Would you say? There will be no oil. He's not buying his oil from Russia. It started. You know, he can't do it immediately. It's a little bit of a process. But the process is going to be over with soon. And all we want from President Putin is stop this. Stop killing Ukrainians and stop killing Russians because he's killing a lot of Russians. Again, it doesn't make him look good. It's a war that he should have won in 1 week, and he's now going into his 4th year. That does not make this big so-called war machine look good. But he could make a settlement. We're willing to settle. I thought we had a deal. The hatred of the two leaders is very, it's an obstacle. It's an obstacle. There's no question about it. But I thought we had a deal 2 months ago. Who would think I created peace in the Middle East and can't get the two guys to settle? But I think we'll get them. But if India doesn't buy oil, it makes it much easier. And they're not going to buy. They assured me they will. Within a short period of time, they will not be buying oil from Russia. And they'll go back to Russia after the war's over. Jennifer?
On the shutdown, sir, are FBI officials being paid right now? Are all the FBI employees being paid, and are all the...
Well, that's what I understand. I hope so.
Thanks to your great work, Mr. President, the 1811 special agents at the FBI are going to receive their paychecks.
Got a lot of people paid, actually. We got the people that we want paid, okay? And we want the FBI paid, we want the military paid. We got the people that we want paid. And I'll tell you, the Democrats, they don't talk about this. You know, we're getting rid of programs that we didn't like, but that were negotiated in, but we didn't like. We're terminating those programs, and they're going to be terminated on a permanent basis. And it's thousands of people, and it's billions of dollars. We're getting rid of a lot of things that we never wanted because of the fact that they made this stupid move. And they don't want to talk about it. You know, they have their day coming up. I hear very few people are going to be there, by the way. But they have their day coming up, and they want to have their day in the sun. But they should really make a deal. So what we're doing, I mean, they call him Darth Vader, but he's actually a very nice person, Russell Vogt. But Russell Vogt is really terminating tremendous numbers of Democrat projects. There's not only jobs, I mean, the project in Manhattan, the project in New York, it's billions and billions of dollars that Schumer has worked 20 years to get. It's terminated. Tell him it's terminated, Jennifer. All right.
On Hamas, sir, what is your understanding of the pace of returning the deceased hostages? Are you pleased?
Well, they're looking for them. Absolutely. They're looking. So we have the living hostages all back. They returned some more today. It's a gruesome process. I almost hate to talk about it. But they're digging. They're actually digging. There are areas where they're digging and they're finding a lot of bodies. Then they have to separate the bodies. You wouldn't believe this. And some of those bodies have been in there a long time. And some of them are under rubble. They have to remove rubble. But there are graves, and some are in tunnels that died in tunnels that are way down under the earth. And the tunnels are like 3 feet. Can you believe it? 3 feet high. They lived like this for a long period of time. It's a horrible atrocity. At the same time, we, meaning Israel, but I knew everything they were doing pretty much. I knew most of the things they were doing, but they've killed probably 70,000 of these people, Hamas. And I said, it's time now. So we'll see what happens. We'll also see what happens. Your next question is going to be the weapons. We want the weapons to be given up, sacrificed, and they've agreed to do it. Now they have to do it. And if they don't do it, we'll do it.
We had the head of CENTCOM today suggest that Hamas needs to hurry up and disarm and follow your comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
That it was the head of CENTCOM saying that. Is that not a signal to Hamas, to the rest of the world, that at some point the U.S. military may more directly engage?
We won't need the U.S. military. We won't need it.
Why not just yield?
Because we're very much involved in it. If we weren't involved, there wouldn't be peace. If we didn't destroy the nuclear capability of Iran, that deal would have never happened for two reasons. The Arab nations would not have felt bold enough to do it because you have a very powerful, at that time, Iran. It's not powerful anymore between what Israel and us did, because, the attack was, if you look at it, we helped them very much. They will be the first to tell you, including shooting down thousands of drones that were coming into Israel. We shot them down. We were shooting them down like it was target practice, but we shot down thousands of drones and missiles also going into Israel. But between what we did to Iran that way with the, conventional, we will call it, and what see that beautiful plane, that B-2, I noticed it on the desk. I always thought it was beautiful, but I never understood it. Now I understand it. It took in hundreds of thousands of bombs in the form of two, but hundreds of thousands of pounds of bombs. And every single bomb hit perfectly. Then they sent Tomahawks in. They sent 30 Tomahawks on top of it. And that was totally, CNN said, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as, as Trump said, because I said obliterated. Obliterated is not a strong enough word, actually. And you saw the Atomic Energy Commission came out and said the word obliteration is very, very, think of it. They came in under potential fire. They entered Iran airspace late at night, in the dark, no moon. The moon was low for a reason. What time we picked it. Couldn't see anything. And they hit every target, and they weren't hit. Nobody saw that plane. That plane is stealth. Nobody saw it. The problem with that is it may be stealth today, but tomorrow it won't be. And we just ordered about 20 brand new B-2 bombers. It's unbelievable as a weapon. I know Putin, when I was riding with him in Alaska, we passed a lot of them. And he said, that really did the trick. I said, yeah, it did. It's amazing. The flying wing.
But you still foresee no reason for the U.S. military to get involved in Gaza?
No, I don't see that. No, I think we're going to handle it very well. We'll be helping Israel. But we have other countries that are now. We signed, many countries signed. And many of those countries relatively are very strong military powers. And Hamas has no support. See, Hamas had the support of Iran. And now Iran says, don't get us involved. The last time they got them involved didn't work out too well. So they used to have the support of Iran. Today, Iran they're trying to survive. When I heard the reports 2 weeks ago, Iran's looking to build a nuclear weapon, I said, don't worry about it. They got a lot of things they want to do before nuclear weapons. I said, the last thing they want to do is a nuclear weapon. It didn't work out. And if they did a nuclear weapon before they got even close, that site would be attacked and it would be wiped out. Yeah.
Mr. President, you're meeting with President Xi in a few weeks.
Yeah.
If you can't come to an agreement or a deal at that meeting, are we in for a sustained trade war with China?
Well, you're in one now. Look, we have 100% tariff. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be exposed as being a nothing. We would have no defense. They've used tariffs on us, but we've never had anybody sitting in that chair that felt the need to do it. And they've allowed us to be $37 trillion in debt, et cetera, et cetera. Tariffs are a very important tool for our defense, for our national security. If we don't have tariffs, we're not going to have national security. As an example, if you look at Pakistan and Iran, I told them I was in the midst of negotiating a trade deal with Iran, and Pakistan was going to be in line. And because of tariffs, they all want to negotiate much differently. We were making a good deal. And then I heard that they're shooting at each other. And I said during one of my conversations, are you guys going to go to war? Two nuclear powers. We are thinking about, I said, here's the deal. You go to war, I'm going to put a 200% tariff. I'm going to stop you from doing any business in the United States. I said it to both of them. Within 24 hours, the war ended. That would have been a nuclear war. And again, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who was here 2 weeks ago, said that man saved many millions of lives in front of a whole group of people because he thought it was going to be war. But when it came to war or having to pay massive tariffs, the tariffs overrode. That's why it's so important. Not only the money, we're taking in trillions of dollars, not only the money, the power to keep peace, the power to be used for good is enormous. But a lot of people didn't understand tariffs. It's also made us very rich. We have a big case coming up in the Supreme Court, and I will tell you, that's one of the most important cases in the history of our country, because if we don't win that case, we will be a weakened, troubled, financial mess for many, many years to come. I don't even know if survivable is a good term. And if we do, we're going to be the most powerful economic country in the world. And all we're doing is using them as a defense against what took place for many years. China would charge us tariffs. It was incredible, but we weren't allowed to charge. And we're allowed to do whatever we want. We just had presidents that didn't want to do it for whatever reason. And it was nothing. But of the 8 wars, I was saying 7, of the 8 wars, I would say tariffs are directly responsible for me ending 6 of them, 5 or 6. Without the tariffs, you have wars raging all over the world. With the tariffs, other than Russia, we have no wars out there. And we've made a lot of good friends, too. Tariffs are so important to our national security. If we don't have tariffs, we don't have national security. Our country would suffer a level that, because they're used so strongly on us. As an example, the European Union, they won't take our cars, they won't take our agriculture, they won't take anything, but they send their cars in, Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, by the millions. We don't send any cars. They don't take them. They were tariffing us out. Agricultural products, they don't take our agriculture. They want their farmers to do it. I understand that. But it was very unfair, and they were tariffing our product. They're keeping out by using tariffs. And we didn't use them, but I used them. And now we made one of the great deals with Europe. $650 billion they pay us. And we've evened it out. It's really a good thing to see. And you have to understand, they've all signed. Japan, South Korea. I mean, South Korea, $350 billion up front. Japan, $650 billion. And they've all agreed to it. They're all happy. But before, it was a total ripoff. And if we don't have the use of tariffs, we have no national security. This country will have no financial security, will not have national security. And the people that brought the lawsuit are people that are aligned with foreign nations that are now being treated fairly, as opposed to just ripping us off and ripping us asunder. So, but if we are not allowed to use what other people use against us, there's no defense. It'll be a disaster for America. That's why I think I'm going to go to the Supreme Court to watch it. I've not done that, and I had some pretty big cases. I think it's one of the most important cases ever brought, because we will be defenseless against the world. Okay?
You'll go to the tariff case?
Did you have one? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you about the Georgia Senate race. I know it's very early, but there's several Republicans in that field that are vying for your endorsement.
A lot of good people in that field.
Yes.
I know all of them, actually. I haven't made a decision on that, but you have some very good people in the Georgia Senate race.
Well, Governor Trump has endorsed.
No, I know. The governor has, and he's spoken to me about it a lot. He likes that candidate a lot. And I understand that. I haven't made a decision yet. But I'm following that race very carefully. I think it's very important for Georgia to get a real senator, because the senator they have now is a horrible senator. He allows all the crime, all the borders. You have open borders. I mean, his whole philosophy is a disaster. That's not representative of the people of Georgia. I know the people of Georgia. I won Georgia 3 times, but they say twice. Okay, I won it very big the last time. And I won it big the first time. And I won it big the second time, but we had criminals that didn't allow, I mean, I hope they're going to go into that. I hope they go into the votes which are being stored in Fulton County and take a real look at those votes, okay? Because I won it the second time, too. But I know Georgia very well. I love Georgia. Those people are great, and they deserve a good senator, because the man they have now is a weak, ineffective person. Okay.
By the way, you won Georgia 3 times.
Yeah, I agree. Do you agree with me?
I do.
He's the media.
For someone that
spends
a lot of time in Georgia, I believe you won that. I really have a question about...
The word believe isn't strong enough, right?
Yeah,
you know.
There you go.
It's true. I know I won, too. We have the great Newt Gingrich. Newt, you agree with us? Good. Otherwise, I'd have him dismissed immediately from the room. You know, his wife, as you know, is becoming an ambassador to a great country, Callista. So congratulations. We're going to take a picture. And the only reason I'm doing it, he speaks so well of me. He said, I'll go down as the greatest president in history. And then he blew it. He said, I'm not sure if I put him above Washington or Lincoln. So I'm not that happy about that, dude.
I've got a question about the weaponization of the DOJ. The media often says your department is weaponizing the DOJ.
Yeah, that's the opposite.
It's the opposite. Todd, you represented President Trump in probably the greatest weaponization of the DOJ by Alvin Bragg. You know firsthand, if you can describe what you saw under the Biden administration and how they weaponized the DOJ.
Well, I mean, I think it's hard to describe what happened in those last 4 years against President Trump. Alvin Bragg, a local prosecutor, his office staffed by somebody from DOJ. Jack Smith, picked as a special counsel, staffs his entire office with DOJ prosecutors. And then there are countless things that happened, all in writing, most of them on the docket, that require no explanation except a complete abomination of the place that the Attorney General and I run now, and Director Patel. So when people talk about this department weaponizing, it's embarrassing. Because there's no scenario in which you can look at what we're doing, restoring justice, doing the right thing in every single case, and say that that's weaponization, and yet remain eerily silent about what happened for the past 3 years. I mean, you read these articles and giggle, because it cannot be true that people really think that what they did to him, not once, not twice, I'm still counting 3, 4 times, but we're the ones that are weaponizing. So this man is not weaponizing the Department of Justice. We're not weaponizing the Department of Justice. It's the opposite. I mean, and also, nobody questions what I'm saying because it's true, because we all lived the past 4 years. So listen.
They never want to bring up the details, but I watch the fake news, and oh, he's weaponized, and he wants to send them to prison. He wants all this. They indicted me like 5 times. I took a mugshot. Who would have thought it turned out to my favor? Because it was a good shot. But I had to take a mugshot. It's right out there on the door. New York Post, front page of every paper in the world. I had a mugshot. They wanted to send me, nobody says that. They say, he's acting very, very tough. He's acting unfair. Let me tell you, if they've been nice to anybody, it's to those criminals, because they are so good having to do with all of the things we're talking about today with violent crime. But if anything, I think this Justice Department has been so respectful of the law, because the other Justice Department, with Rita or Lisa and all of that scum, real scum, what they did to the political opponent of a guy that has a seriously low IQ. Now, in his case, it was low based on his career, but it got real low, okay? It was descending rapidly. But what they did to go after his political opponent is legendary, worse than any third world country, banana republic. And what we're doing is nothing. Are you kidding? Nothing. They write stories. Why aren't they doing this? And we'll leave. I don't have to leave it up to them, but I choose to, at this moment at least. But there's never been anybody treated in the history of politics. You know, they say the 2 worst treated presidents by the media, etc., was that man right there, the late, great Abraham Lincoln, and this guy right there, Andrew Jackson. They say Andrew Jackson was treated terribly. They give him number 1 and number 2, but that was before I came along, Newt. I say I have number 1 times 10. Nobody's been treated like I've been treated. And I did a great job. You know, we had a great first term. And we had one of the most successful economies in history, et cetera. I rebuilt the military. We did a tremendous amount. The last part, we had a horrible thing called COVID, and we handled that well. We made ventilators for nations all over the world. We did a great job. Probably never get credit for it. Look at the therapeutics, the Regeneron, all the different things, the vaccines, all the things we did. We did a great job, but we had to focus on that. But we had the best economy in the history of our country. We're blowing it away right now. Look at the stock market. It hit another all-time high today. That's 48 days out of the few days that I've served. 48 days have already hit record highs. And we have, maybe most importantly, the number, we have now, I was saying 17, it's over $18 trillion is being poured into our country. It's because of the election and because of tariffs. Without the tariffs, you wouldn't have probably 18 cents. It's because of the tariffs, because there are no tariffs if they build in our country. And they understand that. So we have medical companies coming over. We have the AI. We're dominating China in AI. Everybody said that's impossible. We're dominating. I'm letting these massive plants build their own electric generating plants. They're becoming utilities in addition to everything. Maybe they'll make more money with that, who knows? But they're building their own electric because we have an old grid. You wouldn't be able to do that. And we're dominating China. We're dominating with AI, which seems to be the new big thing. That's the new internet. That's the new whatever. So we're very happy with the job we're doing. I'm very happy with the job they're doing. But when you tell me about attacking a political opponent, there's never been, and I'm a legitimate opponent. I watched my son. He's got the #1 best-selling book now. My son, Eric, is a wonderful kid. That guy spent so much time with subpoenas. He got more subpoenas than anybody in the history of our country. Think of it. And he's an innocent, good boy. He's a good kid. He's always been a good kid. All of my children are good. They went through hell. My children went through federal grand juries on a hoax. Think of it. You have Adam Schiff and Hillary Clinton and others make up a hoax and then wanting to put, so they know it's a hoax, and they go before the press, say Donald Trump Jr. will go to jail because of what he's done with Russia. I'll never forget, I get a call from my son, Don, and he said, Dad, I'm being accused of something with Russia. I don't know anything about Russia. He didn't know anything about, think of it, how bad they are. They say he'll go to prison for the rest of his life. He knew nothing about it. On a hoax, the Russian hoax, Russia hoax, on a story that they made up. And they made it up in order to explain why Hillary Clinton lost an election that she lost by pretty good numbers. The second one, actually the second one was even better, but the third one, this one was too big to rig. It was just too big to rig. They would have rigged. They tried to rig it. But think of it. They want to send my children to jail, but they were after Don in particular. I'll never forget Adam Shifty Schiff, a total crooked guy, lying in Congress, making up a phone conversation that I have with you, totally made up. Then when he heard it was taped, he wanted to disappear. And Nancy Pelosi went crazy because they wanted to impeach me based on the conversation that was made up. When they heard the tape, everybody, I won it unanimously in the Republican Party. I got every single vote, something that never happens, and I beat it. But think of it, they want to put my son in jail for something that they made up. So they know they made it up. And they say he will serve the rest of his life in prison. These are sick, bad people. And don't tell me about us going after them. If anything, we've been very, very soft. I wouldn't be that soft, I'll tell you that. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks, very much. Thanks, guys. Let's go. Thank you, guys.
And you were just watching President Trump holding a press conference in the Oval Office with the director of the FBI, Kash Patel. And the focus of the press conference was on crime. Joining us now to discuss is John Lott, the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. John is an economist and world-recognized expert on guns and crime. He also served as the senior advisor for research and statistics in the U.S. Department of Justice under the first Trump administration. So, John, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. So, I was watching that press conference, and Kash Patel is pointing to this graph, right? He had on the side, and then it showed the Biden administration arrests in a 4-year span, 15,000, 16,000, 17,000, and then you go to Trump, first 7 months, 28,600 arrests. The graph shot up. It was like a ski slope. Just talk to us about that.
Well, look, this whole issue of crime isn't rocket science. If you want to reduce crime, you have to make it riskier for criminals to go and commit crime. And that means things like higher arrest rates, higher conviction rates, longer prison sentences. And, this is part of the process that's there. We just recently had crime data come out from the Bureau of Justice Statistics showing that the percentage increase that we had in violent crime during the Biden administration was 59% for felonious violent crime. That's by far the largest increase we've had over any 4-year period since they started collecting that data over 52 years ago. So, I think crime is falling. They mentioned the fact that crime is going down. We won't know. I mean, there are two different types of numbers that you have of crime. You have crimes reported to police. Those are the FBI data. And then you have total crime, both reported and unreported. And that's from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. I think most people care much more about total crime. It's going to be a year or so before we know kind of what happened to total crime this year. But my own guess is that we've reversed the trend. You compare it to Trump's first term. During Trump's first term, violent crime fell. And obviously it increased dramatically under Biden. My guess is we'll be going back to reducing it. Look, you see this notion of the importance of arrests in D.C. I think you're going to be seeing it very soon in Memphis. You take criminals off the streets. You make it riskier for other criminals to go and commit crime, and you're going to see less crime.
Can you point to us the key difference here between the Trump administration and previous administrations' approach in terms of cracking down on crime? What is the biggest difference, the key difference?
Well, I think, look, there's lots of ways you can make it riskier for criminals to commit crime. As I said, higher arrest rates, conviction rates, longer prison sentences, also allowing victims to be able to go and defend themselves. In Washington, D.C., the Trump administration did all those things. They effectively doubled the number of officers on the street at any point in time. D.C. had something like about 1,300 patrol officers. You may have 400 or so on duty at any point in time with the FBI and ATF and drug enforcement agents and others that they put in D.C., as well as the National Guard. They more than doubled the number of active boots on the ground. So you make it riskier for criminals to commit crime, you arrest them. Under the Biden administration, first of all, the U.S. attorney in D.C. is different than other places in the United States because in D.C., the U.S. attorney prosecutes crimes by adults. D.C. prosecutes crimes by juveniles. And during the administration, the U.S. attorney that Biden put in there, just was refusing to prosecute a lot of crimes. And in 2022, something over 60% of arrests, he refused to prosecute people. It was still like 53% in 2023 that they were refusing to prosecute. Judge Jeanine Pirro, the current U.S. attorney, has a very different view on that. You commit a crime, you're going to get punished for that. There's still problems with the district in terms of juvenile crimes. It just came out recently that the 10 individuals who beat up the guy who had the nickname Big Balls, who was working in DOGE, the government efficiency office there, he was badly beaten months ago. They caught the 10 individuals that were there, but it was just announced that none of them are going to get any prison time. They're just going to be on probation. They were released after they were arrested. And so DC itself still hasn't learned, but yet with all the other things that they've done there, it's made it risky for a lot of criminals to go and commit crimes. And you've seen huge reductions in violent crime, something like an 85% drop in carjackings have occurred in the district. That's like night and day. And you have even the mayor, who is more critical to begin with, has become kind of a fan of it. You look at some of the other things that's happened in Memphis. The mayor there was not thrilled to begin with Trump getting involved, but now he's had fairly positive things to say. I was just listening to a press conference that he gave on that, and he was reading from some of his constituents who were, they were able to go play outside now when the kids hadn't been able to go and do that before. So there's been some major changes, and it's just, and Trump has also made it easier for victims to defend themselves. In DC, it was taking 6-8 months or more for people to go get a concealed carry license. the Trump White House put pressure on D.C., and they've sped up the process, so now it takes 2 weeks for people to go and get a permit. Those are dramatic changes.
All right, and Kash Patel was commenting on this as well, that these arrests, they don't mean anything unless he has the partnership of the DOJ. He said this during the press conference earlier today. Can you just talk to us about the role that the Department of Justice has played in all this under the Trump administration?
Right. Well, I mean, the FBI has a lot of agents out of Washington, D.C., to parts of the country where crime is occurring. That's beneficial. They've taken agents who were doing things that were, kind of bizarre political stuff, spying on Catholics, going and recording license plates for parents who would go to school boardings. The huge amount of resources and efforts that they spent going after January 6th. It just came out that the federal government had collected something like 30 million lines of phone call data on individuals that might tangentially been related to January 6th. They're going after real criminals. You just mentioned that they gotten 4 of the 10 people on the 10 most wanted list, individuals that had been on there for many years. And so, they're doing a lot there, and I think also going and prosecuting real criminals.
So, John, just one last question here. How much would you say does illegal immigration contribute to violent crime in the U.S.?
It's significant. Look, even the Biden administration, a couple months before the election, said that something like 9% of those individuals who had been released into the country, so-called non-detained individuals, had criminal. The thing is, those aren't even the ones you need to worry about, because, or least likely, those were individuals who basically turned themselves into the border. The ones that you're probably even most concerned about, and that's bad enough that they had the criminal records that they had anyway. But and it's likely that that's an underestimate even for those individuals, because the Biden administration basically didn't do a very good job of checking these things. But even that 9% is high. But beyond that, you have the so-called 2 million gotaways, people that we saw coming across the border, but we didn't catch. Presumably those are ones that we're concerned about. And then we have millions more that we never even saw coming across the border, because the Biden administration had pulled 76% of the border agents off of guarding the border, instead used them to process the millions of illegals that were coming in. And something like 30% of the passive monitoring equipment along the border was broken, and the Biden administration was refusing to go and fix it. And so, God only knows many millions more we had coming in. Those ones avoided being caught are likely had a good reason for avoiding that, for not turning themselves in. And one can only imagine what the crime rates are for those many millions that have come in.
Well,
and look,
all right.
The other thing is we have this huge increase in illegal aliens coming in during the Biden administration. And at the same time, we had this 59% increase in serious violent crimes that were occurring. I don't think it was an accident, and I don't think it's going to be an accident that when the numbers come out for this year, we're going to see a drop. And we're going to see a drop for 2 reasons. One is a number of criminal illegal aliens have been deported. But beyond that, even the ones that haven't been caught, they have an incentive to lie low, because they know if they do get caught by police, they're going to get deported. And so one way to keep off police radar is not to go and commit crimes right now. And so I think for both of those reasons, crime by illegals are going to be a less serious problem, and I think it's going to help lower crime this year.
Yeah. Well, John, we really appreciate you giving us your analysis. Very valuable to us. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you.
British Prime Minister Starmer promised to release evidence submitted in a now collapsed Chinese spying case. He's seeking to distance his government from accusations of sabotage. The case relied on evidence that China is considered a threat, but prosecutors say they did not receive the evidence needed to clarify that. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has promised to publish evidence submitted by the government as part of a now collapsed China spying case. It follows weeks of accusations that the Labour government was involved in a cover-up.
There have been baseless accusations put about by the party opposite. Let me set out the facts. The relevant period was when these offences took place. That was under the Conservative government between the years of 2021 and 2023.
Last September, Britain's Crown Prosecution Service, or CPS, dropped the case against Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, who were accused of passing sensitive information from Parliament to the Chinese Communist Party. The two men deny any wrongdoing. The Conservative Party has been pressing the government over its handling of the trial.
A serious case involving national security has collapsed because this government is too weak to stand up to China. And if the Prime Minister cannot protect the members of this House, what does that say about his ability to protect this country?
Under the Official Secrets Act, it is an offence to communicate documents which might be useful to, quote, an enemy. Starmer said the fault lay with the previous Conservative government, saying it had only described Beijing as, quote, an epoch-defining challenge, but not officially as a threat. However, British lawmakers and intelligence agencies have regularly warned over years about the threat of Chinese espionage. And in July 2024, in a separate spy case tied to Russia, London's Court of Appeal determined that an enemy under the Official Secrets Act meant a country which represents a current threat to the national security of the UK. Starmer said the decision to drop the case was made independently by the CPS. But before the case was dropped, the CPS said it had for many months asked the current Labour government for new evidence which it believed was necessary for the case to go ahead. The CPS said none of the additional witness statements it obtained stated that China was a threat to national security at the time of the offence. Starmer said he intends to publish the witness statements in full after a short process, given the nature of the information contained. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
And thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. We're taking a short break. We'll be back with more news. And stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'm Don Ma.